Yu Il-shin, a failed web novel writer whose name, The Only God, is ridiculed, feels worthless in a world ruled by hunters. His novella, The God Maker, is unpopular, and while taking a break, he decides to delete the apps from his phone before the deadline. Having come across an unfamiliar application called God Maker, he launches it and is transported into the game. Thousands of monster ants attack, but Yu Il-shin uses God's crushing index finger. Destroying them, then God's condemning middle finger burns the enemies and restoring ring finger heals. These strange abilities make him a god for weak creatures. The world changed with the appearance of gates and dungeons from which demonic creatures poured out. Hunters, by extracting divine energy from monsters, gave humanity a chance. Hunters are divided into classes from G to SSS, and G class is almost no different from ordinary people. Song Miri, a girl from Class B, is disappointed after her 10th retake, thinking that she won't be able to rise any higher. A guy approaches her asking about her condition but runs away because of the phone call. At the reception, they confirm her Class B and she leaves depressed. In Seongdong-gu, Seoul, the gates open, releasing a spiked bull. Hunters of Class A and above are called to battle. Yu Il-shin, saving the girl Song Yeon, runs away, but the monster catches up with him. Song Miri uses Lightning Storm, but does not harm the bull. Defeated, she tells Yu Il-shin to flee, promising to detain the enemy. Remembering her parents, she gathers her strength and uses God's crushing index finger. An electric charge tears through space, destroying the monster. The crowd admires, and Yu Il-shin, calling her by name, thanks her. Song Miri, who recognized his voice from the battle, is frightened, not understanding who he is and how he knows her name. Yu Il-shin stood on the edge of a cliff popular among suicides, but he had no intention of ending his life. On the contrary, he wanted to survive, for himself and his niece Song Yeon, whom he almost lost because of the phone that pulled him into a strange world. Deciding that the device brought bad luck, he wanted to throw it away. A few days ago, before the web novel's deadline, Yu Il-shin, unable to focus, found the God Maker app on his phone, which he hadn't downloaded. The game loaded, where he saw an ant in front of him. Trying to figure it out, he pressed the screen, but the ant died, crushed. In reality, a coin flew into his forehead, and the system reported that he received one God coin, becoming one step closer to the evil god who thirsts for power. Surprised, Yu Il-shin suspected the awakening of the hunter's abilities. 20 years ago, he would have been considered crazy, but the world has changed. At the Hunters Association reception, the test confirmed the awakening, but the class turned out to be G, the worst, almost like a normal person. The ability matter creation was unique but useless. He was offered to register as a hunter for 2.8 million won, but Yu Il-shin refused. No dungeon would accept a G class. When he got home, he spent 5 hours writing a web novel, and then, during a break, he saw the news. C-class hunter Baek Yu-hyun cleared the Dark Dragon dungeon, bringing humanity closer to salvation. Annoyed by the success of others, Yu Il-shin went to bed. At night, my phone was bombarded with notifications from the game. As he continued playing, he noticed coins falling into the room. When he woke up, he didn't find them. Only a few coins with the inscription 100 inches instead of 1. The system congratulated him. He opened the block shop where he could buy items and skills. Yu Il-shin, having decided to try, agreed. Meanwhile, a secret meeting was taking place in Seoul. S-class hunter Kang Woo, who unlocked the hunter shop, and S-class telepath Seong Mina have arrived at the auction to sell items that transcend classes. President Chung Hae-won watched the proceedings with his arms folded. At the secret meeting in Seoul, everyone was rejoicing. The hunter's shop had finally appeared. When a man entered the room, folding his hands and concentrating magic in his palms, the activation began. The room was enveloped in darkness and no one could see anything. The workers called for calm. The store can only be seen by the person who activated it. Song Mina, the S-class telepath, concentrated, and through her ability, the hunter's shop was open to everyone. There was a high-class potion, a holy sword, the blessing of the god of lightning, items from myths and legends. President Chung Hae-won reminded that the fate of the country depends on their choice, and everything must remain secret until the project is launched. Kang Woo, an S-class hunter, was given 2 S-class guards for protection. Meanwhile, Yu Il-shin, G-class, received a notification. He fulfilled the conditions to activate the god shop by spending 100 coins. The coin disappeared, and he wondered if he was a creator like Kang Woo. The difference between Kang Woo's S-class and his G-class is huge, but maybe the store will make money. When Yu Il-shin opened his store, he gasped. The prices were astronomical. Having earned 300 coins, he realized that the goods were prohibitively expensive. Suddenly the range swirled and a 100-coin item appeared, the blind eye of God, which caused blindness. After purchasing it, Yu Il-shin activated the skill but collapsed, blinded. In a panic, he looked for the phone, hit his foot, and his vision returned. The pain was hellish and the skill was frightening. After rereading the description of the store, Yu Il-shin saw items of fabulous value and felt like the hero of a mediocre novel. The G-class is doomed to remain weak unlike the S-class, but someone mentioned exceptions. Deciding to explore the range, he noticed God's crushing index finger. It sounded powerful and was affordable. Having bought the skill, he tested it on an air conditioner, then on a TV, and realized that it was just a remote control for the equipment. Disappointed but intrigued, Yu Il-shin realized that his abilities, although strange, may have hidden potential. Yu Il-shin, disappointed that God's crushing index finger turned out to be a remote control, received a call from the director of the publishing house. He praised his latest work, calling the plot hilarious and full of potential, but pointed out the problem. The next chapter still hasn't arrived in the mail. Yu Il-shin, having asked for 2 days, promised to finish writing and send it. After thinking about it, he realized that killing ants in the Godmaker game was generating content for his novel. Deciding to earn coins, he returned to the game world where he became an ant again. As before, he collected coins until 100 pieces merged into one with the inscription 100. But even the cheap items in the store cost 1,000 coins, and most cost billions. Yu Il-shin noticed Blessing of Bukhara, a low-ranking god whose name was associated with growth, and decided to collect 1,000 coins. While playing the game, he encountered a bug. One ant refused to die. Unlike the others, this one looked different. Perhaps the boss. Yu Il-shin's eyes lit up with excitement. He used all the skills he had honed during his nights of play, but he couldn't hit the fast opponent. Enraged, he became a phone monster, staring at the screen all night. Falling asleep from fatigue, he involuntarily activated the blind eye of God. The system reported, "The nameless god is pursuing victim number 404. Yu Il-shin woke up in an empty movie theater, not knowing where he was. Looking back, he saw on the big screen a giant ant, the very boss, walking through the desert. In a dream that felt eerily real, the ant met his followers for dinner. They told that their food had been destroyed by the god of Black Flame, a terrible beast from which they had miraculously escaped. The ant, feeling threatened, turned to the great shaman, reporting the evil creature number 404. The shaman, believing, was indignant. How could an evil god dare to appear on the sacred lands of the great emperor? He called for the immediate destruction of the enemy. Having gathered magical power, the shaman healed the ant's wounds, blessing it with the words, "May the force be with you." The warrior, inspired, led his kinsman into battle, and the shaman vowed to personally crush the evil spirit. The ants, full of determination, moved forward. Yu Il-shin woke up, not understanding whether it was a dream about ants or whether the ants were dreaming about him. Taking the phone, he noticed that the boss ant was still in the game. Having decided to end it, he received a message. Nature denies evil. A bearded ant shaman from the dream appeared on the screen. Suddenly, the shaman charged an attack that broke through the screen and hit Yu Il-shin in the forehead, leaving a wound. The ants wounded the evil god through the telephone, confident that the great emperor would be pleased. They were preparing to celebrate the victory with the holy maiden, but the shaman, noticing a new threat, ordered to flee. The evil god was attacking. Yu Il-shin, clutching his head, furiously punched the telephone, destroying the ants one by one. The screen cracked, but the ants continued to die. Finally, he broke the phone through and through. The system unexpectedly congratulated him. He received the title of Evil God. Yu Il-shin, who was stunned by the title of Evil God, learned that he had also received the title of Brutal Killer F for 1,000 karma points. Surprised because he considered himself kind, he noticed how the coins were gathering together again. Among them a ring glittered. After examining and smelling it, Yu Il-shin felt a pleasant aroma, like forest phytoncides, and decided that it was the best anti-stress. After putting on the ring, he felt a surge of strength, as if he had been born again, and the fatigue disappeared. At this moment, a notification came. The blind eye of God has completed the analysis. The ring turned out to be Druid's Ring, no 808, which holds the life force of the Khan's forest. Yu Ilshin finally got lucky. Intrigued, he decided to test the blind eye of God on other objects. By activating the skill on the TV, he received full information about it, then did the same with the laptop and the bed. The ability worked by revealing details of the environment. Realizing her potential, Yu Ilshin thought with the Druid Ring and the blind eye, he was still a G-class but clearly stronger. Deciding to test his rank, he went to the Paranormal Center for a re-evaluation. The girl at the reception said that the error rate of the test is less than 1%, but the first test is paid for by the state, and the second one costs $1,000,001. Yu Ilshin, who had expected the F-class at most, was taken aback by the price and decided to postpone his visit. His inspiration to write novels had returned. He needed to focus on work and send the chapter to the curator. In the center, he noticed a crowd of people. The blind eye of God activated, analyzing everyone around, revealing their names, classes, and abilities. Among them, Yu Ilshin saw Song Miri looking sadly at the test results. Surprisingly, he saw her name in full, unlike the others whose data was partial. For the first time, Blind Eye showed the emotions and depression of Song Miri. Driven by impulse, Yu Ilshin approached, apologized for disturbing her, and asked how she felt. Yu Ilshin, trying to talk to Song Miri, asked about her feelings, but she, mistaking him for a pervert, became angry, concentrating magic in her hands. He began to apologize, explaining that he was not a weirdo, but her anger only grew. At that moment, the phone vibrated, and it was Demon Spawn calling. Yu Ilshin, having apologized, ran out into the street to answer. It was his sister who called him an unemployed, lazy bum and told him to meet his niece Song Yeon at the park. Joyfully seeing the cutie, he did not understand how his sister, the evil demon, gave birth to such an angel. Song Yeon asked what the dark past was. Yu Ilshin, after mentioning the morning incident with Song Miri, began to pinch her cheeks. The girl, angry, declared that she hated him and ordered him to stop. Surprised by her hour-long resentment, he did not know how to cheer her up. At this point, the blind eye of God activated, saying that Song Yeon wanted a chocolate ice cream cone. Yu Ilshin offered to treat her, and they bought ice cream. Having paid with God's coins, he received a tiny portion. The saleswoman was clearly stingy. Enraged, he used God's crushing index finger on the machine gun. A meter-long ice cream cone fell out, which Song Yeon happily ate. But the phone vibrated. The title of Brutal Killer F was activated, and the battle luck of Nameless God increased sharply. A strange voice sounded, walking the path of the greatest evil. Let the difficulties make you a true demonic deity. A spiked bull, the same one that had appeared in Seongdong-gu, burst forth from the sky. Yu Ilshin rushed to protect Song Yeon. Song Miri appeared and tried to stop the monster, but it seemed to be aiming at Yu Ilshin, trying to steal the Nameless God. After the fight, Yu Ilshin thought, Nameless God, his nickname in God Maker. The monster came for him, and it's not a coincidence. The message after the bull's death in Seongdong-gu surfaced in his memory. He had surpassed the body limit, the title of Brutal Killer had risen to the first level, and as a reward, he could take the right of a lower-class god for free. But the store offered exclusive rights to the demonic god. He decided to throw the phone, the source of all his troubles, into the lake, but his throw was interrupted by a message from the saint. Yu Ilshin, standing in front of the ants begging for mercy, heard their pleas to the Holy Virgin to save the tribe from extermination. The ant boss asked the saint if she could escape if the great emperor attacked. The soldiers of the Nameless God Empire approached Yu Ilshin, asking if he wanted to save the little creature desperately praying to him. Lost in thought, he saw himself in her just as helpless. The boss, addressing the Holy Maiden of the Black Flame, declared that her death would be a tribute to the emperor. But Yu Ilshin, having killed the large boss ant, saved the maiden. She, shocked, asked him to give her his name. By saying Yu Ilshin, he received her worship as the great god who saved her life. The system gave him the title Good God, Merciful Savior. Now, with the titles of Good and Evil God, his karma became neutral, and his account was replenished by 100,000 coins, bringing the balance to 100,800. Deciding to spend the coins, Yu Ilshin chose the cheap Blessing of the God of Growth that promised to unlock the potential of mortals. Suspecting that it was just an ordinary energy drink, he still drank several servings, but did not feel any changes. Disappointed, he fell asleep and woke up with a splitting headache, not understanding how he ended up at home. His body was teeming with hundreds of ants, hissing and crawling. He jumped up in a panic, realizing that the Godmaker's battlefield had improved thanks to his titles. The ants bit and surrounded him. Living on the 3rd floor, he decided to jump out of the window, confident that he would not die. However, when he hit his forehead on the glass, he realized that he was trapped. Enraged, Yu Ilshin launched an attack, fighting off the ants and aiming at their general. The insects shot fire arrows at him, making it difficult for him to breathe. In desperation, he grabbed some mosquito spray, mixed it with fire, and set the ants on fire. His body burned, barely moved, but he did not want to die. Suddenly a message came. The high-class evil god Silent Nightmare sent a gift. The high-class god's gift sounded promising. The system offered to accept it, and Yu Ilshin, clinging to hope, agreed. Song Miri, thinking about the spiked bull she had defeated, could not forget the surge of power that had awakened her potential. This power could finally fulfill her revenge, but her mother forbade her to take revenge. Meanwhile, Yu Ilshin, suffocated by the fire caused by the ants, desperately used the god's crushing index finger, but nothing happened. Silent Nightmare's ability didn't seem to work. Falling at the window, he thought he was going to die, but the blind eye of God activated, starting the analysis. The door of the room flew open, and in walked a delighted 19-year-old girl, Song Miri. Yu Ilshin, covered in burns, ended up in the hospital. Song Yan, his niece, did not believe that it was her uncle and asked for the password. Calling his sister a demon spawn, he convinced her. The sister burst in and hit him in anger for his rudeness, despite his wounds. Someone knocked on the door, and Song Yan found a bouquet of flowers behind it without a label. Yu Ilshin, assuming that it was from the manager, fell asleep. Song Miri, meanwhile, recalled how she carried him to the hospital after the bullfight, feeling an unknown power. Watching him from the roof for 4 days, she didn't understand what it was about him that allowed her to transcend limits. Embarrassed by her stalker-like behavior, she decided to leave before she was caught. In the Black Flame ant world, the followers begged the Holy Maiden to reconsider. She, the treasure of the tribe, reminded them that Yu Ilshin had saved them from the army of the great emperor. To atone for their sins, they must give up their most precious possession, a relic passed down through generations. Yu Ilshin, waking up in the hospital, was angry. He was dying, and the ants continued to bother him. The Holy Virgin and 101 followers offered an offering as a sign of respect. Intrigued, he agreed. The tribute was given Fruit of the World Tree, one of the 7, capable of increasing stamina. After eating it, Yu Ilshin felt energy rushing into his body, healing his burns and awakening new strength. Yu Ilshin, having swallowed the Fruit of the World Tree, coughed from its salty, spicy, and bitter taste. But the bandages began to fall off, the burns healed, and the body was completely restored. Song Miri, who was watching him from the roof, gasped. He was covered in burns just now, and now he was healthy. Who is he? Yu Ilshin, feeling great, received a notification that God's blessing had been activated. Now he could heal believers. In the world of Godmaker, ants noticed white flakes falling from the sky. Thinking it was snow, they tried them and experienced an unearthly taste. The wounds healed. The blind regained their sight. The severed hand grew back. The ants, calling it a miracle, praised Yu Ilshin. The system congratulated him. He collected 101 true believers, receiving 101 faith points, 111 total, and 10,100 light coins. Yu Ilshin, laughing at the effect a packet of sugar had, found the ants cute. Having decided to sell the items, he went to an abandoned building where he found Heji's stall. The girl greeted him warmly and asked if he was a hunter. Yu Ilshin explained that his abilities had awakened, but he did not have a license. She gave me a form asking me to indicate the origin of the items. He couldn't write about the ants from the game, and the renovation of the apartment didn't justify the wealth. Suddenly, a terrifying gang entered the stall and greeted Heji, thanks to her patronage. Yu Ilshin, using the blind eye of God, learned that the bandits had weak muscles despite their menacing appearance. One of them, offering good items, took out a jade armor, a pile of scrap metal with a 4-hour enchantment, passing it off as valuable. Heji, impressed by the 560 mana, estimated the armor at 3 million won. Yu Ilshin, unable to restrain himself, declared that it was a fake. Panicking, he regretted intervening. The gang, angry, demanded an explanation. He used the god's crushing index finger and the armor burned away, revealing itself as 20-year-old trash. The bandits charged, but their leader suddenly bowed, apologizing and calling Yu Ilshin a high-class hunter. Heji, grateful for his help, assumed that he was a hermit, a hunter who had chosen an ordinary life over adventure. Yu Ilshin showed her the druid's ring. Heji, valuing it at 12 mana points, called it a D-class item, offering a modest price. He was surprised. The fake armor had 560 mana points, and his ring only 12. Heiji sympathized, but Yu Ilshin, after checking the ring with the blind eye of God, saw a note to give it to Song Miri, the Lightning Empress, who was nearby. Song Miri watched Yu Ilshin and was amazed at his quick recovery. Did he use a high-grade healing potion? How could a G-class obtain such an item? His ability to instantly recognize her identity and the strange glow around her confirmed that he was hiding something. She believed that Yu Ilshin would help her transcend the limits of her body. Meanwhile, Yu Ilshin was looking for her in the crowd, and when he found her, he handed her the druid's ring, calling it a special gift. Song Miri, after checking the ring with the professor, gasped, 7,000 mana points, an outstanding result even for an A-class. The ring took her beyond the B-class, strengthening her many times over. Everyone clapped in admiration, but the sister warned him not to jump above his head. Song Miri, mentally apologizing, replied to her sister that she would not let her worthlessness get in the way of her revenge. If Yu Ilshin helps, revenge will no longer be a dream. Yu Ilshin, immersed in a dream, saw an ant leading Jim's 5 million army against the monster ruling the Black Flame Savages. Having lost 100,000 warriors, the ant turned to the great representative of the 10 blades of the Emperor. Waking up, Yu Ilshin realized that this was not just a dream. After being attacked by 100,000 ants, he barely survived, and now there are 50 times more of them. Picking up the phone, he saw a message from the Silent Nightmare, offering power for the sacrifice of 100 people, including a loved one. Enraged, Yu Ilshin used Blind Eye of God and saw General Kamiri, the monster from his dream, in front of him, promising to tear out his eyes and bring his head to the Emperor. Remembering that he saw him in a dream, Yu Ilshin realized that there were 3 days left. The ants in the game were preparing for the funeral of the Holy Virgin, trembling before the Emperor's army. Deciding to prepare, he analyzed himself with the blind eye but saw nothing special. In God's shop, he bought Hellfire, which turned out to be a lighter. The description promised a powerful skill with God's condemning middle finger, but Yu Ilshin, disappointed, called it a scam. Here came a message from the curator, a week without a new chapter. After apologizing for the circumstances, Yu Ilshin, afraid of missing the deadline, activated the Merciful Savior enhancement from Creation of Gods. Working for 20 people, he finished the novella and sent it off. Song Miri, having bought a cake, decided to visit Yu Ilshin to impress him and get his help. Nervously, she climbed up to his floor and rang the doorbell, hoping he wouldn't think she was weird. Song Miri, standing at Yu Ilshin's door with a cake, rang the bell, but no one answered. Deciding that he was not at home, she opened the door and entered. It was not on the table where he usually worked. Meanwhile, Yu Ilshin, having returned from the world of Godmaker, left a pile of pages for the new chapter of the web novel on the table. His productivity was astonishing, but on the way back he was captured by the same bandits he had exposed at Heji's stall. Tied up on a chair in an unknown location, Yu Ilshin did not understand why he was kidnapped. The gang leader chuckled and noted that he managed to sleep in such a situation. Yu Ilshin remembered them: weak constitution, insignificant flame, swindlers from the shop. The leader demanded compensation for the damaged business, threatening but graciously offered to pay by card. Yu Ilshin, smiling, said that he had lost his phone, although he had it with him. Suddenly the blind eye of God completed its analysis, and the countdown to the invasion of the Imperial Ant Army began. The timer reached 0 and Yu Ilshin shouted to be untied, otherwise it would be the end for everyone. A horde of ants poured out of the phone, devouring the bandits. An army of beetles like the one that attacked his apartment was unstoppable. The bandits, recognizing his unusual strength, used fire, but there were too many ants. The leader, mockingly, offered to calculate the debt for the murder of his younger brother. Yu Ilshin, realizing that there was no chance, watched as the leader suddenly collapsed, a stone from the ant catapult sticking out of his body, hitting an artery. The bandits fled in panic, begging for help, but the flames could not stop the horde. Yu Ilshin, still tied up, remembered the trap in the apartment and cursed the game that had dragged him into this. The ants, proclaiming him an evil god whose subordinates were destroyed, surrounded him. The ant boss promised to kill him and serve him as a snack to the great emperor. Yu Ilshin, preparing to die on the chair, heard the activation of the actual effect report on the phone. The boss, stunned, shouted, demanding that the one who attacked the emperor's army be shown. At this moment, Song Miri appeared, finally finding Yu Ilshin. After the battle with Kamakiri, Yu Ilshin and Song Miri returned to his destroyed apartment. Song Miri, amazed by his strength, offered to help with repairs to fix the huge hole in the wall left by the explosion. Calling him master and asking if he was a hermit, she suddenly fell to her knees, begging him to make her stronger. She was ready to carry out any of his orders, despite the difficulties, if only he would accept her as a student. Yu Ilshin, feeling a bad premonition, reminded her that he had never agreed to be her master. When he asked how long she planned to stay, he pointed out that he was only a G-class and didn't understand why she was so attached to him. Song Miri explained that the druid's ring he gave her strengthened her to A-class, and she considers him a master for this gift. Yu Ilshin, happy to have helped, remarked that he was simply lucky to have found the ring. While understanding her desire to become stronger, he still did not feel like a mentor. Song Miri, without retreating, continued the renovation, and soon the apartment acquired a livable appearance. Suddenly there was a thunderclap foreshadowing rain. Song Miri, feeling hungry, praised her work. Yu Ilshin, impressed by her efforts, offered to treat her to noodles with black bean sauce. But her phone rang, an urgent call from the Hunters Association. After apologizing, she was about to leave, but Yu Ilshin stopped her by handing her the blessing of the god of growth, jars that appeared out of thin air. Song Miri, amazed, compared him to the S-class hunter Kang Wu. Not knowing who it was, Yu Ilshin assured that the potion would help. She thanked him and promised to cherish the gift and return soon. Yu Ilshin went to the cafe where the news about the Lightning Empress fight with the S-class monster Drake was being broadcast. The citizens gathered around the screen discussed how A-class Song Miri was no match for such an enemy. The association called for reinforcements, broadcasting the fight in real time. Yu Ilshin, worried, muttered that it was dangerous. She was fighting alone. On the battlefield, Song Miri, while protecting civilians, remembered her sister's warning not to get in the way, otherwise she would not let it go. Gathering herself, she created a huge ball of lightning and fired the charge at Drake. The journalist announced that the Empress had defeated the monster, and the crowd rejoiced. Song Miri, surprised by her success, was happy, but Drake suddenly hit her, knocking her down. Realizing that she hadn't become stronger, she remembered her sister's words about her B-class and her father's orders not to bully. A jar of blessings of the god of growth fell out of his pocket. Drake, still alive, threatened the journalists, and Song Miri, in critical condition, drank the potion. Her body was restored, the energy flowed back, and she, blazing with lightning, prepared for a new attack. Yu Ilshin, watching in the cafe, clenched his fists, hoping that his gift would save her, not suspecting that his abilities were beginning to change not only her fate, but the entire world of hunters. Song Miri used Lightning Storm to hit Drake, an S-class monster. The spectators in the cafe where Yu Ilshin was watching the broadcast gasped. How could the A-class Lightning Empress defeat such an enemy? The journalist announced that she had defeated the ocean monster, and the live interview began. Song Miri, confirming that she was on air, turned to her master, thanking him for the blessing of the god of growth that allowed her to surpass herself. Yu Ilshin, amazed that he was called a master, seeing 2 million views, was confusedly eating noodles in a cafe. Song Miri, returning to his home, admired the taste of the food and thanked him. He asked if her family was worried, and she, looking gloomy, told him that her parents had died during the attack of the dragon of the underworld, a catastrophe that had claimed millions of lives, with the best hunters in the world barely defeating the beast. Yu Ilshin, shocked, offered her his portion of noodles. Noticing her fatigue, she agreed. After checking his phone, Yu Ilshin saw a message. He had reached Song Miri's level of trust. If she says the phrase, "I believe in Yu Ilshin," she will become his believer by bringing God's coins. Remembering his second-rate novels, he realized that the believers were the key to the coins needed to protect against the ant invasion. Turning to Song Miri, he asked her to repeat the phrase. She fell to her knees, embarrassed, and said, "I believe in Yu Il-shin." The phone notified Song Miri, the first earthly follower, the total number 102. Yu Il-shin has acquired the skill Transfer, which allows him to borrow the abilities of believers. Angry that he received a skill instead of coins, he wanted to delete the game. Song Miri, not understanding his reaction, looked at him with bewilderment. Suddenly, tiny people poured out of the portal, calling Yu Il-shin the evil god of black flame. They praised the great emperor, who decided that this monastic god would play a role in the Great War, and they were going to destroy him to prove the greatness of the emperor. Yu Il-shin, deciding to try out the transmission, activated Song Miri's lightning storm. Lightning burst from his hands, filling the room, causing an explosion. The tiny people died, and the apartment was destroyed again. The neighbors, shouting through the windows, scolded Yu Il-shin for the second explosion. Upset by the loss of the repairs, he did not know how to pay for the damage. In the game, King Zhukov, upon learning that Yu Il-shin had killed the envoys, became enraged, blaming him for the lightning disaster. He ordered to bring the head of the reckless creature who insulted the honor of the divine throne of the empire and threw a sharp sword. Song Miri, without using her skills, ran quickly, admiring Yu Il-shin with the speed of a high-class hunter. She asked if he could run more laps. Admitting that he couldn't handle it, he gave her another blessing of the god of growth, advising her to rest. Song Miri, after drinking the potion, felt a surge of strength, unlike Yu Il-shin, for whom it was just an energy drink. Not understanding why the potion affected her differently, he realized that he had accepted her as a student and had to help. When she asked what to do next, he suggested squats. Deciding to find out how to best train her, Yu Il-shin activated the blind eye of God to assess her mental state. At that moment, the space became distorted, and a golden glow appeared in front of him. A tiger burst out of it, wrapped in lightning, sealed in red chains, its aura foreshadowing a new threat. Blind Eye of God. Yu Il-shin revealed that her true power, SS class, was sealed 10 years ago. If he cuts the chains with the god's crushing index finger, her power will return. He extended his finger and used divine power, but instantly returned to reality. Song Miri, having thanked the teacher for the day, was about to leave. Yu Il-shin advised drinking the blessing of the god of growth before going to bed. She nodded and took off at incredible speed, leaving him wondering how strong she would be without the chains. However, the skill did not work. The chains remained intact. Who put them on? Suspecting something was wrong, he put his thoughts aside. Returning home, Yu Il-shin saw a destroyed apartment. A hole in the wall reminded him that Song Miri's chains were not the main problem. The phone vibrated, the silent nightmare watching it. Yu Il-shin, who blocked this creature, was surprised. The new notice stated that the Thousand Blades, space-cutting one, was looking on with distrust. Yu Il-shin remembered, this is the owner of the blade, Thousand Blades, a god whose strength surpasses mortals. Could they read his thoughts? The feeling that stalkers were watching was oppressive. What if they attacked him in his sleep? Suddenly, Thousand Blades offered 2 million divine coins and a god blade for cooperation. Yu Il-shin suspected a trick. Was this stolen money? The silent nightmare chuckled and offered 10 million coins for his right, promising items, rights, and potions for Song Miri. The two gods began to argue. Thousand Blades touted the Ultra Blade, a power that made him invincible, while Nightmare touted the Rose that blooms in the night, which promised power without effort. Yu Il-shin, intrigued, accepted both gifts. The Ultra Blade with 2.2 million coins and 3 uses of Tomb of 1,000 Blades from Thousand Blade, as well as Rose Blooming in the Night from Nightmare. Deciding to save the tomb for later, he activated the rose. Nothing happened. The system explained that it only worked in dreams. Disappointed, he called Nightmare a liar. Then I tried the Ultra Blade. Suddenly, he was overcome with rage. A knife appeared in his hands. His eyes were burning with the thirst for murder. He became a brutal killer, ready to cut everything. In the kitchen, where the workers were saying goodbye, Yu Il-shin was furiously chopping vegetables, ignoring the surprised wife of one of them, who reminded him that he shouldn't do that. When the effect wore off, he collapsed, gasping for breath. The Ultra Blade turned out to be dangerous. Yu Il-shin swore not to touch it, blaming the mustachioed stalker of the Thousand Blade. Falling asleep from fatigue, he did not know that the Beetle Queen, watching, was rejoicing. His death would bring her glory, surpassing the dark spider. But roses bloomed around the sleeping Yu Il-shin. The rose that blooms in the night was activated. The beetles that attacked him were swallowed up by the nightmare flowers, disappearing into their petals. The Beetle Queen, in horror, could not understand what kind of force was destroying them. Yu Il-shin, in his sleep, did not suspect that his new gift was saving his life, but awakening promised new threats. The Beetle Queen, watching in horror as the rose blooming in the night devoured her warriors, recalled the tribe's records. 3,000 years ago, the nightmare god wiped out 90% of the great continent's population. The nightmare flower, the symbol of the silent nightmare, was their curse. The followers of the nightmare decided that this event would go down in history and vowed to approach Yu Il-shin, avoiding the deadly branches of roses. But the plants devoured everyone, and the queen, realizing that she could not defeat the evil god, rushed to attack with a sword. The flower swallowed her weapon. She didn't believe that the attack disappeared into the petals, but it was swallowed up by darkness. In the morning, Yu Il-shin woke up with a feeling of satiety and a strange heaviness in his body. The phone was bombarded with notifications. The Holy Virgin, her 101 followers, begged for salvation. After activating the blind eye of God, he learned that they were poisoned by the venom of the killer bee tribe. Surprised that the ants invaded the hive for honey instead of asking him for sweets, Yu Il-shin decided to take action. The system offered a miracle, a divine gift to the believers, capable of inspiring reverence or horror. The healing required 100,000 God coins, part of the fruit of the world tree that had been consumed earlier. Having agreed, he activated the miracle. A golden rain fell on the ants, washing away the poison. The Holy Virgin, vomiting from the poison, raised her head, saw the radiance, and thanked God. The ants, healed, vowed to prove their faith by creating an offering. Yu Il-shin's title of Good God, Merciful Savior improved from F to E class. His neutral karma attracted the attention of the good gods, including generous abundance. Yu Il-shin felt tired when he woke up. Song Miri stood in front of him, worried about his absence from training. Noticing a statue on the shelf, she asked what it was. He saw the figurine for the first time, a statue of Yu Il-shin in the form of the Black Flame, created by the ants with religious reverence. The note warned that she could blind with her nastiness. Song Miri, delighted, asked to take it away, assuring that it would look great with glue. Yu Il-shin, surprised by her taste, apologized that he would not be able to practice. He needed to write chapters. She agreed to reschedule the lesson. The phone notified that the Holy Virgin had given the sprout of the world tree, which had grown thanks to a miracle, but it would soon perish. Yu Il-shin tried Blessing of the God of Growth. The effect was zero. Remembering how Fruit of the World Tree healed his burns, he decided that the sprout could be grown, selling the fruits for millions of coins. In the God's shop, he found the tears of generous abundance needed to save the sprout, but this required a quest to collect trash on the streets. Yu Il-shin, wandering around the city with a garbage bag, contributed to the cleanliness. The sprout grew slowly. Suddenly, a man called out to him, calling him a newcomer wandering around in someone else's territory. Yu Il-shin, sensing a familiar face, offered money for food, thinking it was a homeless person. The man, angry, introduced himself as Choi Kang-san, an S-class hunter and former janitor. Having accepted the money, he laughed at the charity. Yu Il-shin, expecting an increase in the indicator of good deeds, was disappointed. Nothing changed. Blaming the old man, he vowed to clean up the streets. Suddenly there was a roar, and a monster appeared. There was panic in the street. The monster broke through the rift. People were whispering, not knowing what to do. They noticed Choi Kang-san, S-class hunter Yu Il-shin, nearby. Choi Kang-sang smirked and announced that the prediction about the rift had come true with an 80% probability. Yu Il-shin decided to go. The old man, surprised by his courage, grabbed him by the collar, and they soared into the air. In flight, Choi Kang-san explained that his skills were still there and threw Yu Il-shin to the ground, deciding that he was at least B-class. Before them appeared Beelzebub, a giant demon whose aura was terrifying. The monster, delighted at the meeting, declared that he would sacrifice them to his master. Turning to Choi Kang-san, he told the old man to leave, mocking his age. Choi Kang-san, whose youth was still cracking in his heart, prepared for battle. Beelzebub attacked, and roses that bloom in the night bloomed around the old man, activated by his danger. Yu Il-shin, waking up in a strange place surrounded by plants, did not understand where he was. The holy maiden of the black flame stood before him, calling him the great and merciful god. The rose bushes parted to reveal a battered Choi Kang-san, a drool-covered monster calling for help. The phone notified Yu Il-shin defeated the evil god's minion, bringing peace to the world. He was confused. What did he do? Then came the message. The task was completed beyond measure. As a reward, he received generous abundance. The ability was activated, healing the sprout of the world tree. Yu Il-shin rejoiced. Now he will grow fruits, become the richest writer. The sprout came to life, breathing power into the black flame. Choi Kang-san, lying nearby, puzzled him. Should he leave the old man? The more influence his followers had, the stronger his control over their world. Yu Il-shin hoped that the hunter would be okay. The black flame, in gratitude for saving the sprout, presented a stone statue of Yu Il-shin, radiating religious reverence. Meanwhile, in the real world, people scolded Choi Kang-san. Even in retirement, he could not cope with the monster and ended up in the hospital. Physically, he was fine, but when I tried to give him flowers, he had a fit, possibly an allergy. At the hospital, they were discussing Choi Kang-san becoming the Lightning Empress teacher at the Hunter Academy. Everyone had high hopes for him. The guy grumbled and called his statue an ugly piece of crap. The Holy Virgin reported that the statue increased the ant's sympathy by 105 units. Yu Il-shin, surprised that he was chatting with ants, did not understand how they typed text. The maiden begged to save her tribe, which was attacked by demonic beasts. Enraged that someone dared to touch his followers, he ordered them to be led to the enemies, threatening to tear them apart with his bare hands. Transported to the world of black flame, Yu Il-shin shouted, demanding to see the enemy. The ants, small and slow, ran with all their might and froze in horror. The blind eye of God began to analyze. In front of them was a horde of cockroaches, demonic beasts summoned from the demon realm. The note stated that the call was refreshed once an hour, with a second remaining until the next one. His G-class, fueled by the gifts of the gods, faced a new challenge. Choi Kang-san might yet play a role in the fate of the Lightning Empress and Yu Il-shin himself. Yu Il-shin, surrounded by millions of cockroaches, screamed in terror. The holy maiden of black flame called for the ants to calm down, reminding them that they were blessed by the great god. The ants, seeing his panic, doubted whether God had abandoned them and considered this the end. The cockroaches discussed the plan. The servant, confident of victory, declared that 4 days would be enough to bring the body of the false god to their master. Failure would result in death. Beetle reported that the army of the cockroach Tamer had grown to millions thanks to the poison, the insect spray that Yu Il-shin had bought. The cockroaches died one after another. Among the survivors, Yu Il-shin noticed a crying holy virgin. After asking what happened, he learned that she doubted him, asked for forgiveness, considering herself unworthy of being his believer. Yu Il-shin, calming her down, said that there was no need for this and urged her not to despair. The system notified that he had fulfilled the conditions for the new skill, God's thumb multiplying for 100 divine coins. For Yu Il-shin, who had accumulated millions, this was a trifle, he agreed. The commentary on the skill was strange. Curiosity won out. Deciding to try it out later, he received a message from the manager demanding a meeting. At the cafe, the manager held out a bottle of drink, asking me to try it. Yu Il-shin took a sip and stared at the manager, who was reproaching him for his slow pace of work. Recalling the hardships he had experienced because of his web novels, the manager demanded effort. The phone vibrated. The demonic beasts attacked Black Flame again. Yu Il-shin, irritated, went into the game. The ants, bowing, asked to lead them under the blessing of Lord Yu Il-shin. The Holy Virgin proclaimed that he would cleanse the world of demonic arthroses. In battle, Yu Il-shin used God of Destruction, destroying the Beast of Calamity, earning 300,000 divine coins. Generous abundance offered to choose any skill for reaching the new rank of Merciful Savior, writing off the price. Yu Il-shin chose Creation of Heaven and Earth, a transcendental skill for beings beyond the universe that was worth billions of coins. The system warned him that he did not meet the requirements. The skill was converted into a one-time false creation of heaven and earth, which could partially change his world. Yu Il-shin, not understanding the consequences, agreed. Song Miri pointed to the sky while talking to her sister. A new planet shone near the moon in golden light, causing panic. People whispered about the end of the world. The stranger who called Song Miri a nuisance to the guild leader stated that the time had come, suggested starting with 2,000 people, asking the Lord to wait. This nightmare man vowed to fulfill God's will by blessing the world. In Houston on May 26, 2025, the world froze in shock as the MTS-2 satellite launched to explore the second moon, lost control, and crashed, failing to approach its orbit. The mysterious object, shining gold at night and green during the day, caused panic. Experts linked its appearance to the increase in rifts and dungeons, predicting chaos. The Houston Hunters Association has announced it is partnering with the government to quickly respond in preparation for a wave of monsters. Yu Ilshin coached Song Miri. After 500 laps, he told her to hold the plank. She was surprised by the emphasis on the basics, the master insisted. Activating the blind eye of God, Yu Ilshin entered her spiritual form. A tiger appeared before him, now softer and friendlier. Using the god's crushing index finger, he severed several S-class red chains that were restricting her power. Progress was evident, but the chains still remained. Song Miri felt a surge of strength and better understood the master's methods. Satisfied, Yu Ilshin told her to run another 200 laps, and he himself thought her training required new ideas. Returning home, where the repairs were finally completed, Yu Ilshin received a message from the Holy Maiden of the Black Flame. She asked to give her a name. Considering Holy Virgin too formal, he called her Muravisha, recalling her ant-like nature. She was delighted, and the other ants wanted names too. Not knowing what to call the crowd, Yu Ilshin began to number them. First, second, third. Tired, he received a notification that thanks to his gifts, names, experience from defeating demonic cockroaches, the Black Flame had evolved. A tribe calling itself the Gayami raised Yu Ilshin's level to level 2. The forest around the ants was painted in bright colors. Yu Ilshin gave them houses, vegetable gardens, training grounds, confident that now they would fight off the cockroaches. The ants rejoiced, praising the Almighty God, and again asked for names. Yu Ilshin grumbled as he noted their enthusiasm. Suddenly a button with a question mark appeared. Clicking on it, he saw the Warrior's Tower, a test for the Seeker of Eternal, where the chance of survival is less than 0.0000001%. Horrified, Yu Ilshin built walls around the tower, forbidding the ants to come near. He screamed that every step there meant death. The ants, in panic, begged for salvation. General Muravyov, grieving over his dead comrades, blamed his own weakness. The great shaman Gayami, who had made a contract with the Demon King, begged for a second chance but was interrupted by the cockroach emperor Arachne. Calling the ants useless insects, Arachne threatened to destroy them himself, ignoring the shaman's protests that the great god would sort it out. A mysterious figure, a goddess, appeared before the emperor and called him Your Highness. She reported that she had completed his task, returned, and proclaimed him the future true god, preparing to conquer the heavens, and ordered him to leave the Black Flame to her. The goddess swore to wipe Gayami and Arachne from the face of the earth if they became a threat. The goddess, burning with anger, ordered Arachne, the king of the cockroaches, to make the minions of the evil god regret having angered the great emperor. She ordered the use of the cursed needle of the terrible plague-bearer to inflict suffering on them. The bloodsucker agreed and put forward a condition. He was eager to taste the blood of the golden god. The goddess, smiling coldly, gave permission, promising that Yu Ilshin's blood and the glory for his murder would go to the bloodsucker. Yu Ilshin found himself under pressure from the real world, with his manager threatening to terminate his contract if he didn't submit new chapters of the web novel. Realizing that his career was on the verge of collapse, he decided to immediately get to work, but he couldn't resist looking at his phone to check on Black Flame's affairs. In the world of creation of the gods, the ants of the Gayami tribe slept peacefully in their houses built by Yu Ilshin. One stood out, an ant named First, a warrior obsessed with training, lifting a rock 10 times his size, shouting about his muscles. His zeal after the evolution of the tribe impressed Yu Ilshin. Feeling responsible for the development of his followers, he sent the first one the blessing of the god of growth. The first, shocked, exclaimed that this was a gift from God, and thanked him with all his heart, confident that he was being watched from above. Yu Il-shin, inspired, returned to editing chapters, fighting fatigue and the desire to sleep. The bloodsucker, hiding in the shadows, watched the exhausted Yu Il-shin. The monster that had killed 3 of the 10 blades laughed at the weakness of the evil god who could not sense his presence. The goddess, having clarified the bloodsucker's conditions, approved his desire to taste the blood of the golden god. The bloodsucker, confident that the power absorbed from Yu Il-shin would allow him to surpass the emperor and become a deity, crept up on the sleeping man. His fangs sank into his neck, the blood exquisite as nectar, filling him with power. Yu Il-shin woke up suddenly, feeling a sharp pain from the bite. Bleeding spots appeared on his hand and his body was shaken by a fit of sneezing. In a panic, he rushed to the bathroom and saw in the mirror a brand on his forehead. Bearer of the terrible plague. The curse of chills caused a runny nose, followed by curses of fear, muscle pain, anemia. Weakened, he collapsed to the floor, realizing that without treatment he would die. In the god shop, Yu Il-shin found the elixir of purification, which could remove curses. To activate it, he needed the task of saving 100 people. Barely able to stand on his feet, he went to the hospital, hoping to complete his mission. Kim Tae-bum, a C-class warrior who served the mysterious religion of the nameless god, appeared in the story. Thanks to the miracle of Apostle Johann, he rose from G to C-class and received the task of becoming a sacrifice to purify the world. Calling himself God's warrior and inspired by Johann's mission, he entered the hospital, threatening the hostages. If anyone moves, everyone dies. Songmiri, the Lightning Empress, ran in, demanding that the nurse be released. Kim Tae-bum, noticing the plague mark on Yu Il-shin's forehead, decided that he was his reinforcement for the mission. Songmiri turned around and stared at the teacher in shock, not believing that he was connected to the terrorist. The hospital was in chaos. Kim Tae-bum, clutching the detonator, demanded that Yu Il-shin help him make a sacrifice for the origin of the god of destruction. Songmiri, the Lightning Empress, denied in shock, saying, "This is her master and he is wrong." Kim Tae-bum, pointing to the plague mark on Yu Il-shin's forehead, insisted that he was marked with the same mark and was emitting a bad aura. Yu Il-shin, weakened by the curses of chills, fear, pain, anemia, gasped for breath, begging Songmiri for treatment. Kim Tae-bum, confident that Yu Il-shin, the assistant sent by Apostle Johann, shouted that they must complete the ritual. Songmiri, creating an electric ball, threatened the terrorist, who warned that one move, the bombs would destroy everyone. He accused her of not understanding the importance of sacrifice for the purification of the world. Yu Il-shin, fighting his illness, used the blind eye of God to read Kim Tae-bum's memory. In his memories, he saw the god of destruction demanding victims killed in terror to fuel his power. Apostle Johann, calling Kim Tae-bum God's warrior, promised to fulfill the Lord's will. Kim Tae-bum offered Songmiri. A sacrifice equal to her would satisfy God. Yu Il-shin realized that if nothing was done he would die, and Kim Tae-bum would blow up the hospital. In desperation, he activated the god's crushing index finger, shouting for Songmiri to take action. They attacked from both sides. The Empress's lightning struck the terrorist. The finger of God paralyzed his hand, preventing him from pressing the button. Kim Tae-bum collapsed, incapacitated. Yu Il-shin fell. The brand on his forehead lit up with a green flame. A voice in his head announced, "The curse of necrosis has been activated." Songmiri rushed to the master, asking if everything was okay. Yu Il-shin, writhing in pain, could barely breathe. The goddess, watching, thought her husband, the monster Naba, suggested killing the evil god with poison. She forbade interference. If the plague curse failed, there would be cause for concern. She believed in Arachne's cunning. This creature will leave no bones of him. Yu Il-shin found himself in a strange space. An unfamiliar voice called him a newborn god, condemning him for his insolence. The voice threatened eternal suffering, the use of his body for mounts and his blood for rituals. Yu Il-shin was faced with a task to save 100 people in order to survive. He woke up in the hospital, surrounded by Songmiri. The system congratulated him. The task was completed in abundance. He received the Hua Tuo water elixir. Songmiri, happy that the master was alive, supported him. After drinking the elixir, Yu Il-shin felt his body recover, but a strange taste remained in his mouth. The system reported that part of the creature's divine power had flowed into his hand as an additional reward. Yu Il-shin, after apologizing to Songmiri and saying that he would contact her later, hurried home. Apostle Johann, watching the failure, listened to his assistant. Kimota made a mistake with the bomb. Johann gave the guild leader 4 days to kill the enemies and deliver Yu Il-shin. He described him as radiant, radiating the grace of the gods. At home, Yu Il-shin, enjoying the effect of the elixir, received a notification: Ant 1, a warrior of Gaihe, begging for salvation. Lying on the field, he asked for more of that medicine that Yu Il-shin had given earlier. Yu Il-shin, alarmed, did not understand what had happened. Il-ho, an ant from the Gayami tribe, decided to undergo the trials of the warrior's tower to protect his tribe. On the first floor, in the rock challenge, he had to climb a ladder to the second level. Thanks to the blessing of the god of growth bestowed by Yu Il-shin, he increased his level, changed his job to wear heavy armor. He rushed up with enthusiasm, the stairs came to life, and a huge stone ball rolled towards him. Il-ho was crushed. Yu Il-shin, having read the ant's memory through the blind eye of God, remembered how in the past he thoughtlessly crushed ants for fun. Feeling ashamed, he realized that Il-ho was suffering the same way. The system notified that in 10 seconds Il-ho's life would end. In a panic, Yu Il-shin used the blessing of the god of growth, but it didn't help. The timer was ticking. Remembering the reward from Cheonangyang, he found the divine healing medicine in God's shop and bought it seconds before the end. By using it, he saved Il-ho. The ant, coming to life, thanked God. Yu Il-shin reminded that he forbade entering the tower. Il-ho explained that he wanted to protect the tribe. Yu Il-shin ordered to get out. The doors did not open. The exit is possible only after clearing the 50th floor. Il-ho, frightened, didn't know what to do. The system gave Yu Il-shin the right of the Eternal Seeker, but he, suspecting a trick, put off studying it. There was a knock on the main character's door. Yu Il-shin sent Il-ho another potion, promising to return soon, and opened it. Kim Taemin stood at the door, introducing himself as an elite scout of the guild Magnificence. He called the meeting an honor. Yu Il-shin clarified that he was not a hunter. Kim Taemin interrupted and offered to become one, inviting him to a conversation. Yu Il-shin agreed. Il-ho, inspired by Seeker of Eternal, returned to the first floor of the tower. A fiery aura enveloped him. As the stone ball rolled, he smashed it with a blow. The system congratulated. Il-ho passed the rock test, received the rock's blessing. He entered the second floor, the wind test. Kim Taemin described the benefits to Yu Il-shin: an annual salary of 300 million won, 70% of the materials, rewards from hunting. Yu Il-shin thought that with that kind of money he would be able to write books without fear of the manager, buy steaks, fried rice, and gifts for his niece. He dreamed of investing the rest in a masterpiece, becoming successful, and marrying a beauty. Kim Tae-min, noticing his dreaminess, repeated that such an offer could not be found anywhere. Yu Il-shin, using the blind eye of God, assessed Kim, a human male, a servant of the god of destruction. Realizing that the 300 million was a decoy, he became angry, cursing Kim in his thoughts. He said out loud that he was busy and would contact them later. Kim Taemin insisted that writing was not comparable to their earnings. Yu Il-shin objected. He writes for the sake of the award. Kim Taemin apologized and said that they were killed. He asked for some time. Yu Il-shin, citing a stomachache, asked to go to the bathroom. Kim agreed to wait. In the bathroom, Yu Il-shin, who suspected Kim of being connected to the terrorist Kim Tae-bum, was wondering whether to call the Hunters Association or the police. The wall shattered under the impact of Kim Taemin's fist. He asked threateningly who Yu Il-shin was going to call. Yu Il-shin froze, realizing that his G-class divine gifts were facing a new threat. Yu Il-shin, cornered by Kim Tae-min in the bathroom, tried to explain that he wanted to call the publishing house on an urgent matter, but his opponent didn't believe him. Kim Tae-min, an elite scout of the Guild Brilliance, began to strike, surprised that he was called for such an easy task. Anyone could have handled it, he thought, grabbing Yu Il-shin by the neck, demanding obedience, promising to knock him out painlessly if he didn't twitch. Yu Il-shin, gasping for breath, received a notification, a new mission. To save the believer Song Miri from death, the reward is 100 faith points. In a panic, realizing that the difference in strength with Kim Taemin was huge, he decided to use the power of the great god. As he entered the space of the creation of the gods, he saw Il-ho, who had made his way to the second floor of the warrior's tower. The ant offered to transfer his power through the skill transfer. Yu Il-shin agreed, and Il-ho's donor power flowed to him. Yu Il-shin's body began to grow. His clothes tore, his muscles filled with power. Kim Tae-min, stunned, assumed that this was a hunter with the rare ability material creation, or tempered body, granted to those who passed the test of the warrior's tower. He regretted that he had thought the mission was easy, remembering another scout who had been assigned the Lightning Empress. Deciding not to delay, Kim Tae-min ordered Yu Il-shin to stop fooling around and go to the guild leader. Yu Il-shin, giving in to instinct, rushed into the attack. His fists were pounding the air. Kim Tae-min, an experienced fighter, saw it as a rookie's recklessness, full of holes in his defense. Considering Yu Il-shin to be weak, he relaxed, and Yu suddenly grabbed him by the head, hit him with his forehead, breaking his nose. Threw a heavy statuette, knocking the enemy unconscious. Remembering Song Miri, Yu Il-shin tried to call, but her phone was turned off. In desperation, he ordered the game to find her. The system asked for 1,000 divine coins to calculate the location. After agreeing, Yu Il-shin saw a vision of the sword demon, a man in black, raising his blade over Song Miri, preparing to kill. Blood spurted out, and a voice announced that the South Korean Hunters Association was looking for the Lightning Empress for disturbing the peace and threatening the nation. Yu Il-shin, in horror, realized that his student was in danger. The system clarified that this future, which has not yet happened, could soon become a reality. Remembering how he changed fate with the Death Demon, Yu Il-shin decided to save Song Miri. Knowing that the sword demon was obsessed with blades, he grabbed a kitchen knife and activated the Fate Change Rite for 100,000 coins. His level of merciful savior, connection with the nameless god, allowed him to create a miracle. Yu Il-shin moved to the space where Song Miri, exhausted, lay before the sword demon. She weakly asked him what he needed, and he coldly replied that he was doing work. Yu Il-shin appeared, surrounded by a golden aura. The sword demon, who had not noticed his appearance, suspected his stealth skill. Yu Il-shin, overcome with rage, clutched the knife that had awakened the rage in him, just like during the Ultra Blade. He wanted to cut, shred, destroy. The sword demon, who had slain many geniuses for the sake of mastery, coldly asked Yu Il-shin if he was in league with the Lightning Empress. His flawless technique defeated superior enemies, but Yu Il-shin, giggling, clutched the fruit knife, burning with the desire to cut. The bulging eyes and strange aura alerted the demon. He had never seen such an opponent before. Concentrating, the demon delivered a yellow dodge, a strike that the S-Class was powerless against. He was sure that Yu Il-shin would not be able to resist. He easily blocked the attack with a knife. The demon, stunned, decided that he had underestimated the enemy. Proclaiming that his blade cuts through stone like butter, he launched another blow, which Yu Il-shin parried, reflecting it back at his opponent. Enraged, the demon unleashed a series of attacks. Each time his blade met the knife harmlessly. The demon, who had not heard of Yu Il-shin, understood that the Empress called him Master, which meant that he was a hermit who was not affiliated with the Hunters Association. This explained the uncertainty. Deciding to end the fight, the demon drank a black potion that emitted a demonic aura. A mark flashed on his neck. The power increased, absorbing life energy. Screaming, he announced to Yu Il-shin that he would die. Yu Il-shin repelled the attack with one blow. The demon used Shadow Step. Confident of success, his sword split in two. Yu Il-shin chuckled as he swung his knife, creating a chaotic wave of attacks that crushed the demon. He, looking at his hands, did not believe. He was alive, not wounded. Why did the enemy spare him, having the power to kill? Yu Il-shin grinned and declared himself the sword god. The demon wondered in disbelief. Could this really be the one who stands at the pinnacle of the blade's path, having earned the title through honor? The system notified that the effect of the body of steel taken from Il-ho had ended, and Yu Il-shin had returned to a frail body. He panicked, realizing that he couldn't continue the fight. He tried to summon the 1,000-blade god sword cutting through space, but the access was blocked. The sword demon fell to his knees in shock, admitting defeat. He begged to follow Yu Il-shin, wanting to reach his heights, promising to dedicate his life, to carry out any order, even to rip open his own stomach. The system reported that Sword Demon had become Yu Il-shin's second follower, fanatically devoted. Remembering Song Miri, Yu Il-shin turned around. Demon ran up to her, pouring a high-class potion that restored her strength. He apologized for being independent. Yu Il-shin received 100 faith points from Song Miri for saving him. Current faith level, 139 points. Yu Ilshin was surprised by the title Sword God, grumbling that he was being pursued by insects, walrus types from the guilds. After asking the demon who was to blame for Songmiri's condition, he received a plea for atonement for his sin. Not understanding why he needed a strange follower who was not all there, Yu Ilshin thought, the demon is probably from the Magnificence Guild. When he asked how many he could not kill, he was told that there were not a dozen of them in the country. Yu Ilshin ordered the destruction of the guild Magnificence, reminding that the demon promised to carry out any order. He, delighted, agreed. If the god of the sword wishes, he will gladly fulfill it. Yu Ilshin, having decided to use the assassin against his enemies, sent him to tickle the nerves of the guild. The system notified Yu Ilshin that he had earned the sword demon's fanatical loyalty by fulfilling the conditions to activate the multiplying god's thumb for 100 divine coins. Intrigued, Yu Ilshin decided to test whether the skill would increase his wealth. At home, he rummaged through the cabinets looking for hidden money and found only 1,001. Having activated the skill on the coin, he waited for a miracle, but nothing happened. The system explained that the skill is not applicable to physical objects. Enraged, Yu Ilshin cursed his useless abilities, dreaming of an easy life. The Silent Nightmare wrote, calling for him to return to his god personality, to attack first, to become stronger. Generous Abundance advised accumulating good karma. Nightmare called it too long, suggesting a massacre. Thousand Blades, who cuts through space, added that the blade would pump him up in the morning. Yu Ilshin, inspired, decided to combine approaches, good karma, chaos. In the god creation game, he used the multiplying god thumb to increase the number of Gayami ants. Legions of soldiers, led by the will of God, marched towards the army of the Empire, whose arrival was expected in 4 hours. Among them, Muravisha stood out, healing the wounded with the ring finger of God. She preached, calling for faith in Yu Ilshin, promising a perfect life. The ants listened fanatically. Yu Ilshin's karma grew without his efforts. He was surprised by their zeal and was happy that Muravisha did everything for him. Suddenly the manager called, demanding new chapters, threatening to terminate the contract. Yu Ilshin, who returned from vacation, asked for a break due to personal circumstances. The manager, outraged, called him crazy. Yu Ilshin, ignoring, thought, what if he used the multipist finger on himself? Touching his hair, activating the skill, he felt a surge of power. A clone appeared in front of him, similar but not identical. The timer showed 6,666 seconds. Yu Ilshin, having decided that the clone would help the ants, began to write new chapters. The clone hit him, slapped him, called him an idiot. Having grabbed Yu Ilshin's phone, the clone declared that he would not give in to the pranks and ordered him to get lost. Having activated Brutal Massacre, he grew claws, horns grew on his head, declared a game, and moved to the world of Gayami. The ants encountered a powerful army of the Empire. The opponents, despite the numerical superiority of the Gaiams, were invulnerable. A red flash lit up the sky, and a clone of Yu Ilshin appeared, destroying the enemies. The skill Brutal Massacre increased to rank S. The opponents, in horror, called him the Evil God, similar to the devil. Their bodies disappeared after death. The imperial subordinates, in panic, reported to the goddess that all the soldiers had been destroyed. She, calling this nonsense, ordered the remaining of the 10 swords, the great general, to be summoned, despite the risk of an attack by the neighboring demonic beasts. The Black Flame was a priority. The head of the Golden God had to be obtained before the emperor returned. The subordinate, thinking of Arachne, apologized for leaving without saying goodbye, vowing to bring back Yu Ilshin's head. Yu Ilshin, waking up, did not understand what had happened. Remembering how the clone beat him up, he felt lonely. Generous Abundance asked where the clone was, wanting to get acquainted. After checking his phone, Yu Ilshin saw 129 missed calls, a message from the manager, and the contract was terminated. He was horrified. The system notified, Ant took over the clinic of the Herbal Kingdom, becoming a missionary. Yu Ilshin's level increased. The coins of light and darkness were collected. He cursed the game in rage, seeing no point in success when his life was falling apart. Yu Ilshin, shocked by the termination of the contract, realized that he was obliged to compensate the publishing house for the losses. He was about to urgently write new chapters. The system gave him a task to save a fanatically devoted believer, the Sword Demon, with a reward, the blossoming of his talent, like a flower. Yu Ilshin, torn between duty and mission, wanted to ignore the work. The system, acting independently, showed the thoughts of the sword demon. He was hanging on chains in the basement, suspended by his arms. The woman Keolmi, under the protection of the god of destruction, interrogated him, threatening him with a painless death if he spoke. Her abilities allowed her to summon powerful flames. Yu Ilshin, in horror, learned that the sword demon was captured while attempting to attack the guild's splendor. Standing out among the enemies was Keoldu, a brute from the same guild whose right of creation made him dangerous. After reading Keoldu's memory, Yu Ilshin learned that he was sold to the Black House as a baby and raised to be a murderer. After awakening his Tai Chi abilities, he became an assassin. Cheolmi, Cheoldu, with similar backgrounds, were his rivals. The sword demon, tormented by shame, mentally apologized to Yu Ilshin for the failure. Cheolmi demanded to name the person who ordered the attack on the guild. Keoldu, despising traitors, insisted on execution. Keolmi recalled that Apostle Johann promised 100 million for a live captive for sacrifice. Keoldu, in a rage, threatened to beat her, concentrating his strength in his fists, promising the demon's suffering. Yu Ilshin, seeing this, could not leave the believer. He borrowed Ilho's body of steel and teleported to the sword demon. With one swing, he broke the chains, freeing him. Keoldu, stunned by the stranger's appearance, demanded an explanation. Yu Ilshin waved it off and said that he was busy saving a believer, and wondered what if he used Song Miri's lightning storm in Ilho's body. Deciding that it was brilliant, he activated the skill. The system reported that the skill limit had been exceeded. Divine power did not allow the use of two powerful skills at the same time. The overload struck Yu Ilshin like lightning, knocking him off his feet. Cheoldu, taking this as a mockery, became enraged and suffered the blowback himself. Cheolmi rushed to him, trying to bring him back to his senses. Yu Ilshin, standing firm thanks to his steel body, took advantage of the chance. Cheolmi, furious, asked how dare he, taking a deep breath and releasing fiery steam. Yu Ilshin, expecting death, was surprised. The flame was burning. It was almost pleasant. Ililo's steel body neutralized the attack. Cheolmi, shocked that her fire was not working, vowed to burn it to the ground. She rushed into battle. Yu Ilshin, using several skills, knocked her to the ground. The action of body of steel ended. He returned to a frail body. Yu Ilshin realized that if the skill had dried up earlier, he would have burned out. The system announced, "The rescue mission is complete. The sword demon's talent will blossom." Yu Ilshin waited for his writing talent to be revealed, but nothing happened. Enraged, he cursed the system. The sword demon, delighted, bowed before the sword god, calling his victory over the enemies incredible. Yu Ilshin, without listening, demanded to return home to work. They looked back, and a voice was heard in the darkness. The stranger called Yu Ilshin amazing, happy to meet him. The sword demon shouted to God to beware. Apostle Johann appeared before them, completely naked. He declared that Yu Ilshin was the cause of all this. It was an honor to meet him. Yu Ilshin, stunned by the sight of Johann, froze, feeling that his G-class was being drawn into a new nightmare. Yu Ilshin, using the blind eye of God on Apostle Johann, discovered frightening information. He is in charge of the sacrificial rituals of the god of destruction. The data flashed with question marks, hiding the details, which made Yu Ilshin wary. Some lines were unreadable, as if the system did not want to reveal the truth. The apostle, beaming a crazy smile, called Yu Ilshin brother and tried to come closer. Yu Ilshin recoiled and shouted at the pervert to stay away, referring to Johann's nakedness. The apostle, not paying attention to the insult, declared that he did not believe his luck in meeting another apostle. His delight seemed genuine. His eyes glowed with fanaticism. The sword demon stood between them and forbade Johann from approaching his god. Enraged, the apostle called the demon a pitiful insect, and with one wave of his hand threw him away, slamming him into the wall. Yu Ilshin, stunned, did not believe. The demon, who boasted that he would defeat the Lightning Empress, was defeated instantly. Johann, ignoring the demon, asked Yu Ilshin which god he followed, wanting to communicate. Yu Ilshin, muttering something unintelligible, swung his arm, deciding to act. He activated transmission, borrowing Song Miri's lightning storm, and unleashed a barrage of lightning towards Johann. The blow was powerful. Lightning illuminated the space. The apostle fell to his knees. Yu Ilshin, confident of victory, exhaled. Johann, covered in burns, began to recover. His body ignored the damage, his skin tightening before his eyes. The Empress's skill that could crush the S-Class didn't work. Johann stood up, grinning as if nothing had happened. Yu Ilshin dealt blow after blow. The Apostle rose again and again, as if invulnerable. The term of the transfer expired. Yu Ilshin was left without trump cards. Johann mockingly offered to amuse him some more. In desperation, Yu Ilshin placed his thumb on his forehead, activating the multiplying thumb of God. A clone appeared from a blinding flash. Yu Ilshin, remembering how the clone beat him, was afraid to give orders, fearing an attack. Johann, amazed by the appearance of the second Yun, exclaimed that he was incredible. Yu Ilshin carefully asked the clone if he could help. The clone pointed out the danger. The Gayami tribe was under threat. The death of followers weakens the divine power of God. The clone hinted that Yu Ilshin should know this. Johann, irritated by their conversation, concentrated energy in his hand and released a charge. Yu Ilshin tried to dodge. The blows caught up with him, throwing him back. He saw no point in fighting, feeling that death was near. The clone, calling him a nothing, pointed to the phone from which a strange flame burst out. The clone stepped into the fire and disappeared, leaving Yu Ilshin alone with Johann. Miss Arachne instructed the minions. 1, mentally begging for forgiveness for leaving without saying goodbye, vowed to bring the head of the evil god, weakening him through the destruction of his followers. In the village of Gayami, the eldest aunt taught the children to avoid the forest, not noticing the shadows. An Arachne follower who had infiltrated the village activated Poison Wave, releasing a toxic mist to poison the tribe, undermining Yu Ilshin's strength. The ants were suffocating. Panic was growing. The village was plunging into chaos. Yu Ilshin, in a panic, remembered the clone's hint about burning the enemy. Guessing that it was the middle finger of God, he decided to use his own skill, hoping to turn the tide of the battle. Yu Ilshin, in despair before Apostle Johann, decided to use God's condemning middle finger. A weak flame reminiscent of a lighter burst from the finger. Yu Ilshin, the funeral, remembered that the skill was worthless and began spamming it in a panic, creating many small sparks. Johann mockingly declared that the tricks are over and concentrated magic in his hand, preparing for the final blow. Yu Ilshin, feeling abandoned by everyone, even by the clone, screamed for help, cursing the pervert. But Johann suddenly grabbed his chest and blood began to flow from the wounds. His regeneration, which made him invulnerable, stopped working. The system has notified. Merciless hellfire is consuming enemy forces. Yu Ilshin, stunned, did not believe that a weak skill could do such a thing, and was angry that he was not warned earlier. Johann, wheezing, tried to advance, not realizing that he had lost. Meanwhile, in the world of Gayami, the ants were suffocated by the poison wave of Arachne's minion, who was harassing the village. He cursed the evil god, blaming him for everything, but he felt threatened. Yu Ilshin's clone, the second eye, appeared in front of him. Arachne's follower, mistaking him for the shadow of the black flame, prepared to fight, but the clone, causing an explosion, threw him away. Upon entering the village, the clone saw the dead ants and his aura darkened with anger. In the real world, Yu Ilshin was writhing in pain as if his bones were being ground. The number of Gaiam's believers was declining, weakening his divine power. The phone was ringing off the hook with notifications, and Yu Ilshin, in a rage, told him to fix it. The system offered to save the believers with the healing ring finger of God for 5 million coins, proportional to the number of those affected. Yu Ilshin, realizing that he could heal himself, used the skill for 10 coins. The pain subsided, the body was restored. He immediately saved the ants, and the 5 million came back, covering the costs. Inspired, he waved to his followers, rejoicing in his invulnerability. Johann, seeing Yun standing, became enraged and attacked again. Yu Ilshin, using transmission, borrowed Ilho's body of steel. The muscles expanded, and he activated the god's condemning middle finger. The fire, now more powerful, sprayed out, forcing Johann to dodge. The apostle, delighted, called him amazing, but added that he would be the icing on the cake for the sacrifice of the god of destruction. The sword demon was the bait, and Yu Ilshin was the true target. Johann, thanking Yun for his help in choosing a victim, raised his hand. The ceiling cracked, revealing a red abyss in the sky. Yu Ilshin, in horror, used God's crushing index finger, but it had no effect on the god of destruction. Realizing that this was the end, Yun closed his eyes, remembering his dream. to become a powerful and merciful god revered by all. Hope was fading. The system revealed the name of God, the great mountain devourer, known as the thousand-headed one who cuts through space. He was betrayed by his lover who split his world. From the god of peace, he became the embodiment of vengeance, plunged into the abyss. Yu Ilshin, standing before the red abyss, turned to the great god, calling for him to bring down vengeance on his enemies. Above him towered a tower from which an ominous light emanated. The sword demon, paralyzed with terror, could not move, but wanted to help his sword god. Yu Ilshin, noticing his condition, shouted at him to watch as he unravels the gods and perverts. Apostle John, bound by black snakes that had burst forth from the abyss, begged for mercy, swearing allegiance. But the snakes swallowed him, turning him into a statue. A yellow eye with tentacles opened from the abyss, the true face of the god of destruction, a bloodthirsty demon. Yu Ilshin, without losing his resolve, summoned the sword, activating the Ultra Blade, the gift of the 1,000 blades that cut through space. The sword grew to gigantic proportions, increasing its melee power. Aiming at the eye, Yu Ilshin pierced it with one blow, gouging out the vulnerable point. The abyss shook and the demon disappeared. In the 12th district, Heo Kang-chul, the head of the Hunters Association, surveyed the destroyed area, suspecting an SSS-Rank rift that could give birth to a monster that destroys countries. Having found a survivor, the weakened Johann, he ordered him to be taken to the medics. Johann returned to the memories when he was barely alive, looking at Yu Ilshin, considering him a god among gods. Meanwhile, Songmina, the Lightning Empress' sister, defeated the S-Rank monster with telepathy alone. The Hunters, amazed by her power, were puzzled as to how an S-Class could deal with a dragon that was resistant to mental attacks. Songmina, irritated, demanded the Age Stone for 100 million, threatening death. The Hunter, calling the dragon a sluggish lizard, was surprised by her displeasure, but admitted that completing an S-Rank dungeon without losses was impressive. 2 days later, Yu Ilshin, suffering from muscle pain due to overexertion from the Ultra Blade, met with his niece. She, carefully healing his wounds, warmed the shepherd to ease the pain. Yu Ilshin explained that the giant sword given by the 1,000 blade saved the world, but exhausted his body. Sword Demon was sitting in the corner watching, and his niece was looking at him curiously. Yu Ilshin reminded the demon that it was time to go home, mentioning the broken door in the bathroom. The demon, apologizing for the inconvenience, called himself unworthy of the sword god. Yu Ilshin, seeing his fanaticism, came to terms with his oddities and asked if he had carried out the order to destroy the guild Magnificence. The demon replied that it was not necessary. Songmina and the Hunters Association launched an operation against the underground organizations of Korea, including Splendor. Yu Ilshin, after learning about Songmin, a model and S-Rank hunter, wondered, "Her last name is the same as Songmiri. Are they related?" Deciding to test it out, he planned to visit the healing center to heal the disciple with the healing ring Finger of God. Taking the phone, he summed up, "Defeating part of the god of destruction brought good deed points." The system clarified that Yun had only defeated 1/100th of God's essence, comparing him to an abyssal dragon. She then proposed a promotion mission: gather 1 billion believers, or convince 10 S-classes to worship him for the good god, or kill 1 billion beings by absorbing their power for the evil god. Yu Ilshin, stunned, could not choose between missions. The anger grew. Why did he have to be both a good and an evil god? Yu Ilshin, overwhelmed by the promotion mission, couldn't decide whether to recruit 1 billion believers or convince 10 S-Rank hunters for the good god or kill 1 billion creatures for the evil god. Both tasks seemed insane, and the reward, the power-up, was not worth the effort. Suddenly it dawned on him, set the stalkers against each other. Manipulation will allow the missions to be completed without unnecessary expenses. Admiring his own genius, he decided to take action. He went to Songmiri's treatment center and found her training. She, jumping joyfully, rushed towards the master. Yu Ilshin, irritated, scolded her. She was seriously injured. She needed rest. Songmiri objected that she couldn't lie around feeling better and unwrapped the bandages to reveal clear, scar-free skin, calling it a miracle. At that moment, her sister burst into the room, seeing Songmiri removing the bandages. In a rage, she hit her, scolding her for her carelessness in front of the left-wing man. Turning to Yu Il-shin, she demanded to know who he was. Yu Il-shin, surprised, asked what she was doing there. The sister, calling him suspicious, asked who he was to Song Miri and what he had done to make her behave like that. Song Miri, panicking, begged her sister not to touch the master. The sister, hearing the word master, looked at Yu Il-shin skeptically, calling him a slob like a homeless person, and doubted that he was a teacher. Song Miri gestured to Yu Il-shin to keep quiet about the fact that he was not from the academy. Yu Il-shin, playing along, said that he teaches physical education at the Academy of Hunters. The sister, lost in thought, asked what rank he was, considering him a weakling. Song Miri defended the master, insisting that he was incredibly cool despite his appearance, and was probably stronger than his sister. She urged her to stop being rude. The sister grinned and took off her cap and glasses, revealing herself as Song Min-woo, a famous S-rank huntress and a renowned beauty. Yu Il-shin recognized her immediately. Song Mina, outraged by her sister's insolence, reproached her. Having risen to A rank, she dared to contradict. Using mind control, she entered Song Miri's brain, forcing her to kneel and submit. Song Miri, clutching her head, tried to explain that it was a mistake. Song Mina, without listening, glanced at Yu Il-shin, ordering him to disappear. Yu Il-shin stood up for him, advising him to solve family problems with words. Song Mina used mind control on him, but the skill didn't work, leaving her shocked. Song Miri, delighted, shouted that the master had resisted his sister's ultimate ability. Song Mina, interested, demanded to reveal Yu Il-shin's rank. He, not wanting to admit to the G class, evaded the answer, asking why she was interested at all. Song Mina softened and apologized for her outburst, admitting that she had not seen his strength. Asking her to look after her sister, she complained that Song Miri was whining about the bad food, even though she brought porridge, wasting precious time. Yu Il-shin, touched by her concern, used Blind Eye of God. The system showed Song Mina, 24 years old, mission of the God of Destruction, under the curse of the abyss. Yu Il-shin wondered whether he should reveal this. Despite her character, she cared about her sister, so he decided to ask if she had noticed any problems while hunting, hinting at the curse. Song Mina's expression changed, and she asked sharply how he knew. Yu Il-shin, citing his sensory skill, apologized if he made a mistake. Song Mina smiled and waved it off, but her mood was changeable. After saying goodbye, she left. Song Miri ran up to the master and asked what he was thinking about. Yu Il-shin, without revealing his thoughts about the future, suggested going out onto the roof to train her inner world. Activating the blind eye of God, he saw a tiger, still cute but chained up. Using the god's crushing index finger, he tried to break them, but the chains wouldn't budge. Yu Il-shin, disappointed, expected that after the power-up from defeating the god of destruction part, it would be easier. Removing the seal would have elevated Song Miri to S rank, making her his first follower of that level, but it didn't work. The scan showed that her S rank and electrical abilities were sealed. Yu Il-shin concentrated on the seal, looking at Song Miri as if threading a needle. He realized that without solving the nature of printing, there would be no progress. Deciding that Song Mina might know the answer, he asked the student where her sister had gone, feeling that a heart-to-heart talk with the S-rank hunter was inevitable. Meanwhile, the apostle was praying in his cell. His faith in the god of destruction, based on the hope of salvation, turned out to be a lie. Meeting Yun changed him. He saw in him a god among gods. Johann prayed for salvation, asking forgiveness for his sins. The G-class master received a notification through the system. Johann had become his fanatically devoted S-class follower, a former servant of the god of destruction. Yun, surprised, considered it luck, but a message came. Johann was dead. The system reported that the abilities of the deceased fanatic were being absorbed, causing excruciating pain. Demonic energy burst out from the phone, and Yu Il-shin writhed, absorbing the apostle's powers. He realized that he could use the abilities of dead followers, but he didn't know who killed Johann. A man dressed as a plague appeared in the apostle's cell, accusing him of attempting to assassinate the Lightning Empress. Concentrating his power, he squeezed Johann's heart, killing him in seconds. Johann, dying, did not resist, believing in salvation through Yun. The sword god, resting at home, was upset. Song Miri was busy, and the sword demon had left. The progress of the missions, one S-class follower for the good god and 1/10 for the evil one, was encouraging, but Johann's death was disconcerting. Yun, rejecting the path of a hunter, decided to write. Within hours, he created chapters based on real events, hoping to attract readers and believers. But the comments were disappointing. He was criticized for mistakes and bad style. Despondent, he decided to look for a job. There was a knock at the door. Angry, thinking it was the sword demon, the G-class master opened it and saw the Lightning Empress. She collapsed on the floor, begging her mentor to help her with this difficult task. The G-class master, looking at the Lightning Empress's plea, was unable to refuse her pleading eyes. Considering himself a bastard for being weak, he agreed to help despite his bad feeling. The system notified, Song Miri's faith has increased by 10%, bringing in faith points. Intrigued, the sword god asked her what she wanted, but she only smiled mysteriously. The next day at the Hunter Academy, the Lightning Empress revealed the plan. Yun was to act as her guardian in place of his sister, an S-rank hunter, since she had missed too many classes. Yu Ilshin, considering the task to be difficult, remembered Song Mina's hot temper and realized why she was not an option. 10 points of faith now seemed like a trap. Song Miri, delighted, complimented Yun's suit suited her and suggested that she wear it all the time. He objected that he only had one suit and it didn't interest him. The Lightning Empress insisted and offered to buy him clothes, since she had plenty of money. The G-class master refused, but she begged him to at least give her a sports uniform so as not to hide his brutality. Clutching his head, he compared her fanaticism to Ant and Sword Demon, grumbling that they would finish him off. It was time to hurry to the meeting with the director. In the office of Director Lee Gyun-wook, a muscle man with a name to match his muscles, he asked Yun's relationship to Song Mi-ri. She called him her older brother, but Lee Gyun-wook, noticing their differences, doubted it. The sword god panicked, feeling that they had been exposed. The Lightning Empress, angry, insisted that they were alike, but this was obviously a lie. Yu Ilshin, using the blind eye of God, found out. Lee Gyun-wook is not an ordinary person, perhaps with special abilities. The head teacher, who was waiting for Song Min, assumed that Yun, like the entire Song family, was an outstanding hunter. The G-class master, in denial, called himself an ordinary person, which caused surprise. Meanwhile, Janitor, the Academy's director, and an S-class hunter, was fighting in the city. A supreme S-class monster, a demonic guard, burst out from the gate. Choi Kang-san, concentrating his strength in his fist, threw the creature back with one blow, striking the fighters. They didn't know where this hunter came from, considering him to be at least S-rank. The janitor, dreaming of a quiet life, understood that his age was taking its toll. It was his duty to teach the youth at the academy, but the problematic student Song Miri was causing trouble. Her powers were held back by an internal barrier known only to the top of the Hunters Association. They had high hopes for her, but they demanded control and gradual growth. She was supposed to show up today, and Choi Kang-san was going to explain everything. In Lee Gyun-wook's office, after learning that Song Miri's guardian was a writer, he perked up. He loved books and asked what Yun was writing. He told me about a story about a colony of ants controlled via a telephone, with characters like the Holy Ant and the Jock Ant. Lee Gyun-wook lit up, remembered something familiar. The Lightning Empress, blushing, dragged Yun to the director's office. Choi Kang-san allowed entry, but the sword god was nervous, as if he was going to an interview. The director froze upon seeing him. He recognized Yun as the S-class hunter he had met earlier. Yu Ilshin, also remembering him, was delighted, hoping for a short conversation. But Choi Kang-san tensed up and assumed a fighting stance as if facing a threat. Song Miri, not understanding, stood between them, demanding that they calm down. Choi Kang-sang, in a panic, muttered about a terrible creature that might appear. His reaction was frightening. He saw danger in Yun. Lee Gyun-wook, intrigued by Song Miri's cousin, watched but did not intervene. The G-class master, trying to ease the tension, mentioned that he had given the janitor 5,000 won the last time they met. Everyone froze. Choi Kang-san, stunned, jumped out of the first-floor window, landed in the bushes, and ran away. Yu Ilshin shrugged his shoulders and said that he did not understand his behavior. The Academy's curator, justifying the behavior of director Choi Kang-sang, suggested that he went crazy after the last mission, the hazards of the profession. He apologized for the incident, assuring that Choi would soon return to normal. The G-class master, remembering the janitor's oddities, doubted that he had ever been in his right mind, but decided not to argue. Soon, Choi Kang-san, having caught his breath, returned to meet with the Lightning Empress and her guardian. Yun noticed his suspicious gaze. Song Miri, trying to defuse the situation, offered the mentor some delicious cookies, assuring him that they were amazing. The sword god, having tasted it, received a notice. The believer Song Miri Nim presents a tribute, a favorite snack. The director, stunned, stared at him even more angrily. The guy didn't understand whether it was because of the cookies. Yu Il-shin, not understanding the reaction, suggested that they go outside and talk in private, but Choi Kang-sang was indignant, saying that this was not necessary, and suggested that everyone sit down to discuss. The G-class master, sensing something was wrong, prepared for the worst. The head teacher explained that he had contacted the guardian because Song Miri regularly skipped classes. He acknowledged her talent but stressed that she needed supervision to succeed and asked Yun to keep an eye on her. The sword god agreed, promising to take care of the Lightning Empress, mentally wishing for him to leave as soon as possible. He thanked me for my time and headed towards the exit. But the director stopped him, saying that he couldn't just let them go. With shining eyes, he exclaimed that he had been looking for them for a long time, calling the meeting fate. Yu Il-shin, puzzled, did not understand why Choi was so excited. The director, praising the Hunter Academy's equipment, proposed conducting tests to measure Yun's strength. He, frightened, saw no point in it, but Choi insisted, promising to fulfill any wish if Yu Il-shin agreed. The G-class master, deciding to be cunning, offered to turn a blind eye to all of Song Miri's absences, including future ones. Choi, to the curator's surprise, agreed, not wanting to miss the chance. The curator tried to argue that this was wrong, but Choi, carried away, led everyone to the examination. Yun found himself in front of a force-measuring device. He asked if it was dangerous, but the scientists assured him that the test was qualified, although unusual for the average person. Choi Kang-sang insisted that this was important, despite previous tests showing Yun's maximum being a G-class. The device, the sphere of selection, assessed the abilities, the number of followers of God, and the sacrifices made. The sword god, upon learning that the sphere could see believers, felt a bad premonition. Placing his hand on the sphere, he caused a golden glow to appear. The test was completed, and the scientists, after studying the results, announced that Yun was still a G-class, with no outstanding performance. Yu Il-shin, who expected recognition of his greatness, was disappointed. He hoped for a B or S class after all. He is a god. The director, not believing it, demanded that the machine be checked, claiming that an error of 0.1% was impossible. Choi Yunbi, head of the medical team and daughter of Choi Kang-sang, confirmed the accuracy of the results. The director, angry, pressed her, but she reminded him that she was at work and remained adamant. The G-class master, confident in his divine power, did not understand why the sphere could not see his power. Choi Kang-sang, recalling Yun's incredible strength when they met, guessed that the abilities were activated under special conditions. An idea struck him to push Yu Il-shin to manifest them. The sword god, not wanting to continue, suggested that the Lightning Empress have a snack on the way home. But the director, getting into a fighting stance, declared that they were not finished. He challenged Yun to a fight to show his true strength, believing the machine to be a mistake. Yu Il-shin, not eager to fight, noted that he had nothing to offer. However, he remembered. Sword Demon and Johan believed in him after the battles. If you defeat Choi Kang-san in S-class, he can become a follower, advancing the mission of the good god. Enthusiastic, the G-class master agreed. Choi Kang-san, delighted, suggested that they move to the training hall. The curator, outraged, called this unacceptable. The director cannot fight the G-class, so he will fight. The G-class master and the academy director found themselves on a training field surrounded by a strong iron net. Yun, looking at her, wondered if she could withstand the superpowers. Supervisor Lee Gyunwook, a top B-class hunter with a huge amount of experience, asked if the sword god was sure that he didn't want to wear protective armor. Yu Il-shin replied that since the enemy was without them, he would also manage, wanting a fair fight. Lee Gyunwook smiled and noted that the difference in experience was great, and warned the newcomer not to regret it. Choi Kang-sang added that caution would not hurt. The Lightning Empress, supporting her brother, shouted for him to take out the enemy with one blow. The G-class master, stunned by her enthusiasm, froze as the curator announced the start of the fight. A crowd of students gathered around the arena, buzzing about Teacher Ginuk testing the new teacher. Yun, confused, did not understand where so many spectators were coming from. Lee Gan-wook suggested that they finish quickly before more people gathered. The sword god agreed, deciding to attack first. Gynok concentrated and mentally brushed the situation aside. He didn't care about the difference in class, but he wanted to show the director the power of an experienced hunter. He rushed forward and attacked. Yu Il-shin, dodging, surprised the curator. He weakened the blow on purpose, but the newcomer dodged. Deciding that this was luck, Gynok waved his fists, threatening the end. After striking 7 times, he was stunned. The G-class master remained unharmed. He activated the god's crushing index finger and aimed it at Gynok's forehead. The blow sent the curator flying across the arena, knocking out a tooth. Gynok collapsed, unable to understand how a G-class could do such a thing. The director, who had been watching silently, only nodded as if he had expected this. The Lightning Empress shouted proudly, admiring her mentor, and the crowd buzzed. Their teacher was defeated by an unknown person. Choi Yunbi, Choi Kang-san's daughter, watched the fight in bewilderment. Yun seemed ordinary, but his strength was astonishing. Medics carried Gynok away in critical condition. Yu Il-shin, worried about the curator, did not have time to come to his senses before the director entered the arena, announcing that it was now his turn. By using the blind eye of God, the sword god knew that Choi Kang-san's muscular strength was beyond all reasonable limits. Knowing that a fight was inevitable, he hoped that victory would attract the S-class as a believer, furthering the mission of the good god. Choi Kang-sang excitedly recalled their first meeting, when Yun showed incredible strength. He was eager to prove his abilities, feeling his blood boiling in his veins. The director suggested to begin. The G-class master cunningly made a bet. The loser would fulfill one legitimate wish of the winner. The director agreed, clarifying that his position required decorum. Yun assured that the wish would be modest, confident that he would find an approach to Choi, as with Song Miri. Choi Kang-san set his condition. If he wins, Yu Il-shin will fulfill his wish. The sword god, seeing no problem, agreed, knowing he would win. The director, surrounded by a blazing aura, rushed to attack. The blow was swift, but Yun, having activated Il-ho's body of steel, was transformed. His muscles increased, his body became massive. The crowd gasped, not understanding what was happening. The director triumphantly declared that he knew. Yu Il-shin, the man from the prophecy. The G-class master, puzzled, asked what prophecy he was talking about. Choi explained that the hunter Yoji had predicted the appearance of a creature that was both cruel and noble, and he was obliged to force it to join the academy. Yun, thinking, realized, cruelty and nobility, this is an evil and good god. The prophecy seems to be about him. However, he dreamed of the glory of a writer and the Nobel Prize, and not about working in the academy. While parrying the enemy's blows, the sword god noticed that he was weaker than he expected. Choi Kang-sang, disappointed, stated that Yun was not up to the prophecy's genius and demanded that he fight at full strength. Choi Kang-sang, acknowledging Yun's abilities, noted that it was quite good for an S-class but was confident of victory. He believed that the academy needed such fighters and was ready to use all his power to persuade the sword god to his side. Yu Il-shin, standing in a fighting stance, warned that he would attack. As he got closer, he noticed how the director's aura flared brighter and his muscles grew larger, as if he was fighting at full strength. The crowd watching the fight was amazed. The duel went beyond all bounds. Some suggested intervening to stop the destructive fighting. The Lightning Empress, frightened, screamed for them to stop, fearing that the opponents would destroy each other. Meanwhile, in the world of Gayami, Il-ho passed the flower test on the 11th floor of the warrior's tower, bringing tribute to Yun. The system offered a reward, but the G-class master, focused on the battle, waved it off, deciding to deal with it later. He wanted to at least break his opponent's arm. Both fighters, concentrating their strength in their fists, collided with a deafening blow, remaining on equal terms. Suddenly, a bouquet of roses appeared in front of Yu Il-shin, a tribute from Il-ho. The sword god, stunned, did not understand why he needed flowers at such a moment. Choi Kang-san turned pale when he saw the roses, remembering their first meeting when a huge bush appeared around Yun. Then the flowers caused panic and trauma in the director. He screamed and ran out of the arena, crying and muttering that he couldn't lose, but he couldn't defeat this creature either. Yu Il-shin, puzzled, suggested that the director was allergic to flowers. If Choi Kang-san escaped, does that count as a victory? After checking his phone, Master G-Class did not find any notification about the new believer. Deciding that the director would become his follower later anyway, he noticed another message. 4 million new residents wanted to settle in his settlement in the game Creation of Gods. Pleased with the growth of the faithful, Yoon accepted them, and the system reported that the protective walls had been doubled and houses for the new arrivals had been built. The number of followers reached 10 million, but was far from the billion required for the mission of the good god. The sword god, realizing the magnitude of the task, cursed, not noticing that the ants in Gayami, watching him, mistook his curse for a prayer. They began to repeat obscene words addressing their god. Yu Ilshin, noticing this, froze, realizing that he shouldn't swear in front of the children. Meanwhile, the crowd in the arena continued to stare, and the G-Class master decided it was time to leave. He planned to find the director to finish what he started. However, the system suddenly issued an alarming notification. Do you wish to save your sword demon believer from committing suicide? Yu Ilshin, shocked, saw the image of the sword demon holding the blade to his chest. The G-Class master, having received the notification of the sword demon's suicide attempt, instantly teleported to him. The demon screamed and begged for help, holding his sword to his chest. Yun snatched the blade and threw it on the ground, demanding to know what fly had bitten him and why he wanted to die. The demon, trembling, explained that this was not suicide. His body was controlled by another being. He warned the sword god to be careful, calling the enemy a master of strange techniques. The G-Class master suggested that someone was whispering to the demon remotely, subduing his body. Suddenly, a female voice rang out and an S-Rank hunter appeared in front of them. Faithful Blade, stunned, did not understand what she needed. They had never crossed paths. Yu Ilshin, using the blind eye of God, confirmed Song Mina, the messiah of the god of destruction, was under the curse of the abyss. He explained to Demon that his sensory skill had revealed her identity. The sword demon, delighted, noticed that only celebrities followed the sword god. The S-Rank beauty, removing her plague mask, appeared before them. The demon liked her appearance, but he refused to believe that such a goddess could be a villain, vowing not to let himself be fooled. Song Mina, irritated, stated that the mask, an A-class artifact with blocking properties, was not affected by sensory skills. Her aura flared with anger, radiating power. The sword god tried to calm her down by offering to talk. He asked what she was doing here, but the S-Rank hunter, furious, replied that she wanted to kill that thing, the sword demon. He confessed to Yun that Songmin was on the list of people he could not kill. The G-Class master, surprised by his weakness, decided to avoid conflict. He offered to hush up the matter, assuring that Faithful Blade, despite his rudeness, was a nice guy. The S-Rank beauty chuckled and asked if he really wanted her to forgive the attempted murder of her sister, the Lightning Empress. Yun, dumbfounded, did not understand how she knew, and objected that the demon had done nothing. He offered to personally deal with the demon, taking responsibility for Song Miri. Song Mina, looking coldly, noted that Yun had appeared at the right time, but let him decide the fate of the demon himself, and then she would deal with him. The G-Class master froze, not understanding why she was saying that. The S-Rank hunter explained. Johan had called him by name, blaming him for everything. She demanded to know why Yun was hanging around the Lightning Empress, suspecting that he was playing the savior to gain her trust. The sword god, outraged by her conclusions, asked a counter-question. If she treasured her sister so much, why did she seal her abilities? The S-Rank beauty was stunned and couldn't understand how he knew. Considering his sensory skills dangerous, she decided to kill Yun. Song Mina activated the crown seal, and the system revealed that the seal on the Lightning Empress was created by Song Mina in exchange for her life, which was promised to the abyss. Yu Ilshin didn't understand why he would sacrifice himself for something like that. Suspecting that the S-Rank hunter was jealous of his sister's potential, he angered her. She, blazing, used an analog of mind control, ordering him not to talk nonsense. The G-Class master froze, and the sword demon, screaming, warned God of the danger. He swung at Song Mina and charged, but she focused another skill and threw him back, slamming him into a tree. Yun, seeing this, was amazed at her power. The demon wheezed and said, "There are rumors that Songmin is not an S-Class but an SS. The sword god, remembering his G-class, realized the gap in strength. The S-rank beauty concentrated her energy into her fist and punched, ordering Yun to die. His heart sank, ready to burst. The G-class master clutched his heart and writhed in pain from the S-rank hunter's attack. The sword demon screamed in panic, unable to bear the thought of his god's death. Yun, gritting his teeth, croaked that he wasn't dying, but just tickles, and told Demon not to interfere. The S-rank beauty was stunned and couldn't believe it. Her mental attack that could rip apart a heart didn't work. Acknowledging that the sword god had exceeded expectations, she chuckled, warning that mental abilities were not her only weapon. A blue aura flared up around her, swirling around her. The sword demon shouted and warned Yun. Songmina, who was close to SS class in physical parameters, surpassed any S class in Korea, including the janitor. Yu Il-shin, realizing her power, felt fear. The S-rank hunter concentrated her firepower and unleashed flames on Yun. His clothes caught fire, and where Songmina had stood, there was only the equator of the explosion. The G-class master was shocked and almost melted, not expecting such power from the mental hunter. The S-rank beauty mockingly asked if he had melted too quickly since she was just getting the hang of it. A blue ball of power appeared in her hand, growing to 15 times her size. Pointing it at Yun, she manipulated the temperature, alternating between hot and cold, to drive him mad. The sword god lost the feeling in his leg, and the faithful blade, frozen, trembled. Yu Il-shin, surprised by the arsenal of attacks, suddenly realized, if Songmina, a mental master, everything could be an illusion. He shouted to the demon that this was unreal. The S-rank hunter giggled and confirmed, she creates mental spheres that embody illusions that are indistinguishable from reality. The ground beneath their feet split and they began to fall. Songmina tore off a piece of earth, raising it into the sky, and declared, if Yun falls into the illusion, he will die even if it is not real. She demanded to know who he was and why he had become attached to the Lightning Empress. The G-class master, realizing that the chances of being heard were slim, decided to tell the truth. He introduced himself as a graphomaniac, the author of the novel Even Ants Have Gods, and said that he didn't need anything from Song Miri, only to guide her on the path to S-class. He begged her to remove the seal from her sister, not understanding why Songmina did this. The S-rank beauty, furious, shouted that he didn't dare interfere in her affairs. If he wants to die, let him die. She suddenly dropped the giant globe onto Yun. Faithful Blade, in horror, did not believe that his god would die. At the last moment, the sword god activated skill transfer, borrowing Ilho's body of steel. His muscles grew, and gathering his strength, he lifted the globe, throwing it aside. The G-class master, rising with incredible strength after reflecting the illusory globe, approached the S-class hunter. The S-rank beauty froze, not believing that the sphere had crumbled from one blow. Faithful Blade, delighted, exclaimed that he had never doubted his god. Yun chuckled and accused him of lying. The demon clearly hesitated when he called the attack an illusion. The sword demon fell to his knees and began to apologize, calling himself a sinner. The sword god, irritated, ordered him to back off and sit still so he could deal with Songmina. Turning to her, he asked to finally talk normally. Quickly approaching, he provoked a reaction from her. The S-rank hunter jumped back, activating a new skill. Yu Il-shin, trying to calm her down, explained that he only wanted a dialogue. But the S-rank beauty, concentrating her power at her head, used universal mind. The seals swirled around her, and a powerful energy sent the G-class master flying. Suddenly he found himself in a white space, enveloped in soft, elastic air with a scent of freshness. The sounds of insects, typical of summer nights, could be heard. Yun felt like he could achieve anything he wanted, as if he could move mountains. But the space changed. Stars and the night sky appeared, captivating with their beauty. Songmina appeared before him, burning with anger. She accused him of making her angry and activated the all-consuming space. The sword god began to fall into the dark abyss, sucking his body in. Panicking, he tried to use God's crushing index finger, but the skill didn't work. The abyss sucked him in, leaving only his head. The S-rank hunter, placing her foot on his forehead, declared that he would not die in the real world. Once in this space, he would become a vegetable, forgetting about his goals. She gave him one last chance to tell the truth about his intentions with the Lightning Empress. The G-class master, hysterical, shouted that he just wanted to talk, not understanding what she was trying to achieve. The S-Rank beauty insisted that he reveal why he was attached to her sister. Yun, trying to appease her, addressed her respectfully, but this angered her even more. She decided not to give him a chance and ordered him to die. The abyss swallowed him completely. Yu Ilshin, gasping for breath, felt his eyelids growing heavy. He knew he couldn't fall asleep, but sleep was overwhelming him. He was tormented by the question, why did Songmina seal the Lightning Empress's abilities? Suddenly, the system notified, you have fulfilled the conditions for using the rose that blooms in the night. The S-Rank hunter felt a strange feeling and turned around. Roses began to emerge from the space enveloping Yun's body. He felt like he was falling into the best dream surrounded by flowers in this sinister dimension. The S-Rank hunter, furious that she couldn't find out anything about the G-class master, suspected his connection to the abyss due to his knowledge. Deciding that his identity was unimportant, she only wanted to silence him. As the S-Rank beauty was about to return to reality, she turned around and noticed roses breaking through her space. Stunned, she didn't understand what was happening. Nothing could enter her dimension without permission. The roses with sharp fangs attacked. Songmina fought back, dodging their attacks, but the plants grew stronger and stronger. The first time she encountered something like this, she assumed that it was Yun's doing, and her anger reached its limit. Meanwhile, the sword god, immersed in sleep inside a cocoon of roses, was recuperating. The cocoon protected him, enveloping him in soft warmth. The S-Rank hunter dodged the attacks, feeling as helpless as she did on that fateful day when she encountered the terrifying monster. Falling to the ground, she could not believe her weakness. The roses, twining around her body, began to squeeze. Their thorns dug into her skin, and the huge buds, as if alive, mocked her. The S-Rank beauty screamed in fear and begged for forgiveness, insisting that she could not die until she took revenge on the Abyss Dragon. But the thorns pulled her into the mouth of a giant rose, swallowing her completely. Yun, waking up, did not understand where he was. The space around didn't look like the battlefield with Songmina. The system has notified, Blind Eye of God Birthright has been activated. Walking forward, he saw a table with a video camera and a new message. He was plunged into the nightmare of an S-Rank hunter. Deciding to watch, hoping to find out why Songmina sealed the Lightning Empress's abilities, the G-class master witnessed the events of 15 years ago. The Abyss Dragon, a terrifying monster, destroyed hundreds of people, including the Song sisters' parents. He noticed the girls' lame potential and branded them, planning to use them as victims. The S-Rank beauty, thanks to the brand, quickly became an S-class hunter, driven by revenge. Years later, rumors of the dragon's death did not convince her. She knew that he would return because the brand continued to work. Songmina's strength grew, but at the cost of her life. The curse of the abyss devoured her years. The Lightning Empress, wanting to avenge her parents, also sought power. The S-Rank hunter, fearing that the mark would consume her sister, sealed her abilities using the full power of her mark. Songmiri screamed in pain as her power was blocked. The S-Rank beauty apologized and asked her sister not to dream of revenge, so that at least she would survive. Yun, shocked, shed tears as he realized the tragedy of his sisters. The cocoon of the mind created by Songmina's universal mind was destroyed by the rose blooming in the night. The sword god returned to the real world. Faithful Blade, seeing him, was happy, asking if everything was okay. Yun did not react while Demon was shaking him. Delighted, the demon suggested that God had defeated the great Songmina and offered to enslave her. The G-class master, looking at the girl lying in the mud, was shocked. The S-Rank hunter was barely breathing. Her condition was pitiful. He tried to wake her up, begging her to wake up, glad that she was alive. The S-Rank beauty opened her eyes, looked at the enemy who was asking about her condition with concern, and quietly muttered the word mother. The S-Rank hunter muttered mom and fell asleep again. The G-class master, concerned about her condition, decided to move her to a safe place to recover. After using the healing god's ring finger, he found that the skill didn't work. Turning to the stalkers in the God Creation app, Yun asked how to get Songmin back on his feet. Truth Ever Seeking replied that there is no truth in the legs, suggesting training muscles for endurance. Thousand Blade, Space Cutting, advised to sacrifice her since she was too bad. Generous Abundance noted that Healing Finger would work if Yun became a high-ranking god. The sword god, Angry, realized that as a low-ranking god he couldn't cope, and a high-ranking god was an unattainable goal. As he thought about it, he remembered that every time he lost consciousness, he would see a notice about the rose that blooms in the night bestowed by the silent nightmare. It dawned on him. The roses protected him in moments of weakness, activating when he was unconscious. Impressed by his brilliant conclusion, Yun asked the silent nightmare why he remained silent. Nightmare replied that if the roses had consumed Songmina's mind, there was nothing that could be done. The G-class master, outraged, refused to leave her in that state. Nightmare offered only one way, to spend the night with her to revive her mind. Yun, having understood correctly, went to sleep next to the S-Rank beauty, covering her with a blanket so that she wouldn't freeze. Nothing happened. In the morning he realized that Nightmare had meant literally separating dreams to bring back her memories, like filling a glass. The sword god started off simply by asking her name. The S-Rank hunter woke up and remembered herself and the Lightning Empress, but upon seeing the roses she panicked, screaming about the bad flowers that were consuming her. Her mind remained that of a child, and Yun, dejected, allowed her to sleep on. News reported that Songmina was missing, presumably kidnapped. The G-class master, realizing that he had become a kidnapper, decided to hide in the wilderness until it was restored. Otherwise, the fans would skin him alive. He considered contacting the Lightning Empress, but put it off. When he went outside, he saw faithful blade training. He knelt down and greeted God, praising the fencing book that Yun had given him. Calling it revolutionary, Demon admired the new style. Yu Ilshin, who spent 20 million on a book and a sword, was angry. The system reported that true strength was in the fists, not the blade, and there was no return. Deciding that anger was useless, he offered the demon a potion that helped Il-ho become an S-class. The faithful blade, thanking him, vowed not to let him down, continuing his training. The system notified, the number of S-class followers has increased to 2, Il-ho and NT. The sword god, surprised that the ants had reached S-class, spurred on the demon, not wanting him to give in to the insects. Recruiting new S-class seemed impossible, so upgrading the existing ones was the only way. While thinking about breakfast, Yun saw on the news a statement from S-class hunter Baek-yu Hyun. Whoever touched Song Min-woo would have their neck broken. The G-class master, suspecting that it was about him, turned away from the powerful blow. Baek-yu Hyun stood before him, burning with anger. God's blind eye showed that Baek-yu Hyun possesses outstanding flames. The faithful blade interceded, calling Yun the almighty sword god. Baek-yu Hyun, not knowing him, laughed. The demon praised God, claiming that the S-Rank huntress had lost and could not imagine life without him. Yun, realizing that demon was saying too much, tried to stop him. Baek-yu Hyun, in a rage, decided that they were dead. The faithful blade, confident in God, attacked, but Baek-yu Hyun, drawing his sword, burned it in a second with a fire skill. Teleporting to Yun, he grabbed him by the throat, demanding to know where Songmina was, and if the demon's words were true. Baek-yu Hyun, overcome with anxiety, looked for his lover and muttered something about a flea, wondering if what he heard was true. The G-class master, observing him, noticed the aura of a red dragon, the powerful sword power in the S-class hunter. In a fit of rage, Baek-yu Hyun grabbed Yun by the neck, imagining himself pushing the ball down his throat, and mockingly asked if he was deaf. An idea flashed through the sword god's mind. In order to get rid of this frightening aura, he would need to use something drastic. He attempted to use the god's crushing index finger technique, but Baek-yu Hyun interrupted him, demanding to know what he was planning and threatening to hit him. However, the moment Yun activated his skill, he struck the S-class hunter's dragon aura. Baek-yu Hyun's aura went out of control. He froze in horror, not understanding what was happening, and began to panic, shouting what a G-class master had done. He simply waved his finger, ordering the dragon to close his eyes. The dragon complied, dropping to the ground, and Baek-yu Hyun, stunned, looked at his dragon sword, which began to crack from Yun's single touch. Confused, he continued to squeeze his opponent's throat. The sword god advised him to release his grip, otherwise he would sail away, quoting a poem about a fairy tale going to bed. The loyal blade, who was watching his master, was amazed at how easily Yun defeated the S-class hunter. Baek-yu Hyun tried to make his sword burn, but the G-class master noticed that the weapon was baked and advised him to retreat. At this moment, the S-rank beauty, Baek-yu Hyun's lover, came out of the house, awakened by the noise. She shouted for everyone to be quiet because they were disturbing her sleep. Upon seeing her, the S-Class hunter was overwhelmed with joy, not believing that she was alive. However, Song Mina looked at him, called him a bad uncle, and pointed her finger at him, ordering him to die. She attacked, and Baek Yu-hyun flew back, shocked by her aggression. He couldn't understand why his beloved, with whom he had spent so much time, had attacked so abruptly. The S-Rank hunter rushed towards Yun, calling him Sun Miri Nim, and calming him down, assuring him that the bad guy would not touch her again. Baek Yu-hyun watched with tears in his eyes as his lover turned her attention to someone else. He was devastated to learn that she had been taken away and that she didn't even recognize him. The G-Class master, seeing his suffering, decided to heal the S-Class hunter by focusing energy into his ring finger. The system calculated the cost of healing, 100 coins for a low-ranking creature with S-Class potential. Baek Yu-hyun, feeling the healing, was amazed by its power, comparing Yoon to a healer from South America who was weaker. The sword god, with a sly smile, realized that Baek Yu-hyun would now follow him to the ends of the earth. He tried to explain the misunderstanding, but they were interrupted by the noise of 3 helicopters in the sky. Yoon, irritated, suspected the S-Class hunter of bringing reinforcements, but he swore that he was looking for his beloved alone. The helicopters began to land, and the G-Class master wondered if there was a bounty on his head or if it was the Hunters Association's investigation team. In any case, he was clearly irritated by what was happening. The helicopters buzzed like a swarm of flies, and the G-Class master noticed the director peering out of one, staring at him. Yun suspected that the director thought he was the kidnapper, especially after seeing the S-Rank beauty behind him, who was accompanied by the Lightning Empress, her sister. The S-Rank huntress, recognizing her sister, rushed to her, and the sword god, realizing that they wouldn't just believe him, decided to tell the truth. He explained the story in detail, mentioning the Lightning Empress's seal, which caused her to act strangely in order to protect her younger sister. Song Mina hugged her sister and asked her not to cry, even though she was still suffering from memory loss. The sisters confessed their love to each other. Lee Gun-wook, the association's representative, awarded Yoon a Class B hunter's license despite tests showing Class G. This was due to his victory over the flower monster and the director's guarantee. The mention of the flower caused fear in the S-Rank beauty and even the director, who was shocked by its power. Lee Gun-wook explained that Class B is awarded for the ability to summon, which should not be underestimated. The G-Class master remembered the rose that blooms in the night, and the director immediately offered him a job as a professor at the academy with double pay. Although Yoon initially declined, citing his busy schedule with the Ants, the novel, and searching for S-Class followers, the amount with many zeros convinced him to accept. He had always dreamed of being a professor. At the academy, the Lightning Empress was delighted, and her classmate noticed this, asking what happened. Song Miri replied that someone special would be coming to class. Soon the sword god appeared as a temporary teacher, replacing the homeroom teacher. He began the lesson, but Trueblade, his companion, ordered everyone to be silent, declaring that he would see to it that the students absorbed the knowledge of the great rich man. Yoon suggested self-study, which caused confusion in the class. The Lightning Empress interrupted him, reminding him that their homeroom teacher taught physical education. The G-Class master, not wanting to be bothered by the director and Baek Yu-hyun chasing after him, decided to go to sleep. The loyal blade strictly enforced silence, threatening with the wrath of the dragon's fang, which caused the students to ridicule the sword's name as childish, but they were frightened by its aura of at least Class A. The next day, Yun came again and announced self-study again. The students were puzzled. The teacher was either sleeping or playing strange games with the ants. The Lightning Empress's friend didn't understand why she admired this lazy slob. Song Miri, defending the sword god, said that her friend did not understand his charm and left, mentioning that her sister and Yun were waiting for her. The friend was shocked that the Lightning Empress was dating a teacher after school and decided to save her. The next day, Master G-Class announced that there would be no self-study. The class would train in pairs. Song Miri's friend hoped to become his partner, but Yun ordered Faithful Blade to watch the students while he himself was going to sleep. The friend, indignant, exclaimed that she had no partner and challenged the sword god to a duel, throwing him a challenge. Faithful Blade was amazed by her courage. and Choi Yunbi threatened to cut Yun's salary if he continued to shirk his duties. Yu Il-shin, sighing heavily, agreed to the duel. He and his student entered the arena, preparing for the fight. Go Mengji, the Lightning Empress's best friend, accused the G-class master of sleeping in every class, and he had nothing to say in response. Yun explained to himself that his dream was caused by the need to sleep next to an S-rank beauty until she recovered, which is why he gave up his bed to her. However, his peace is disturbed by Baek Yu-hyun and the janitor, who have been living in his apartment for a week now, getting drunk every day. The sword god was outraged that people like them were even considered S-class hunters, and was worried about the future of Korea. He tried to drive them out, but they did not react, continuing to drink sometimes to rain, sometimes to good weather. The S-rank hunter, to his surprise, was enjoying their drunken antics, finding them hilarious, though Yun was worried that they were having a bad effect on her fragile mind. As he was trying to rest after they passed out, Songmina woke him up, demanding food. The G-class master had no time to sleep. At night he took care of the S-rank beauty, and during the day he endured noisy neighbors. Suddenly a notification came. Russian S-class hunter Sergei died in Gangwon-do, found dead in a plant. The Hunters Association has not yet made an official statement, but it was assumed that this was a case of a catastrophic-level monster. Baek Yu-hyun showed a photo with an inscription in the language of an ancient African tribe, indicating that Sergei was sacrificed to a god. The director insisted that they go there immediately. Baek Yu-hyun activated teleportation and the two disappeared. Yun, while preparing fried rice for the S-rank hunter, called their departure a miracle. Songmina asked if Choi Yunbi, whom she considered normal and capable of raising her, unlike the sword god, would come today. In the arena, Yu Il-shin prepared for a duel with Go Mengji, a 19-year-old necromancer with mediocre skills. She summoned Hades, a giant zombie who once served the mountain-eating god. To the G-class master's surprise, Hades refused to attack, acknowledging him as a great supreme being. Guo Mengji was shocked, demanding that her monster submit, but Faithful Blade confirmed that even the dead acknowledged the greatness of the sword god. Yun, mentally communicating with Hades, learned his story. Once Hades died protecting his master's beloved, and became a zombie, wandering for 1,000 years until he was summoned by Go Mengji. This story touched Yu Il-shin. The system notified that the sword god could accept Hades as a follower of the mountain-eating god thanks to his divine power. He agreed, recruiting a zombie who became his third follower. The system offered to evolve Hades with divine power, and Yun, intrigued, agreed. 2 auras flared around Hades, and he began to roar as he transformed. The Lightning Empress, delighted, called Yun the best, and the class witnessed the miracle performed by the sword god while Hades was evolving. The Dark Paladin Hades, who evolved from a giant zombie, was transformed in appearance. His body was covered with golden durable cleansing patterns. The students were amazed by this sight, calling the G-class master a god who had performed another miracle. Hades, kneeling, swore to be a faithful shield to his new master, thanking him for his blessing. The system has noted the progress of the Good God rank promotion mission. 4 followers with S-class potential or above. Guo Mengji, shocked, couldn't understand what had happened to her Hades, who had suddenly spoken and submitted to Yun. Suddenly the sword god felt very unwell and began to lose consciousness. Hades picked him up, and the students, who had surrounded the teacher in panic, noticed that he looked bad. The Dark Paladin reassured them, stating that Yun was simply sleeping due to the depletion of divine power spent on evolution. He promised to guard his sleep. In his dream, the G-class master found himself on the lap of a beautiful girl named Generous Abundance, who praised him for his efforts, and placing her hand on his head, restored his strength with a bright flame. Yun felt like he was in paradise, unaware that at that time a terrible evil was approaching the city. Meanwhile, the S-rank beauty, bored at home with a lollipop, offered Choi Yunbi a candy, but immediately refused to share, calling it hers. Choi Yunbi sighed as she thought about how hard it was to deal with Songmina, who acted like a child, and recalled her former arrogant nature. She hoped that Baek Yu-hyun and her father were okay in Gangwon-do, and she wished that the S-rank hunter, if she were in her right mind, could help them. Suddenly, Songmina broke the lollipop and screamed in horror, claiming that she saw a monster that wanted to eat her. Choi Yunbi tried to calm her down, but she couldn't understand the reason for her fear. At this time, a strange man in a cloak appeared in the city, sensing the presence of 2 sacrifices for God, the seeds of the Abyss Dragon, one of which, unripe, belonged to the Lightning Empress with her sealed powers. When passers-by tried to ask him for identification, he called them inferior beings and decapitated one of them with a wave of his hand. Gathering dark power into his fist, he punched the floor, destroying it and causing panic. The stranger claimed to be looking for sacrifices for his god and, despite the alarm in the building, ordered everyone to be silent, considering the rest to be trash. The hunters surrounded him and tried to protect the janitor, but the stranger was looking for the Lightning Empress, the Abyssal Dragon's immature victim, and began to approach her. The mysterious stranger, clutching the stone in his hand, called everyone around him annoying parasites and used a devastating blow that destroyed everyone who tried to resist. One of the hunters blocked his attack, but the enemy continued to search for his target. A voice over the loudspeaker called for everyone to evacuate, and S-Class hunters were expected to arrive soon. The Lightning Empress, taking a fighting stance, ordered Faithful Blade to take the G-Class Master to the bunker, intending to buy at least 10 minutes. However, the Sword Demon countered, stating that Dark Paladin Hades would handle the task, and told her to flee while there was time, as he would deal with the new monster himself, a massive creature similar to a giant crocodile dinosaur. The monster declared that no one would be able to break through the territory barrier it created, an ability that only higher monsters like the Abyss Dragon could possess. Faithful Blade tried to fight the alligator but was thrown into the wall. Alligator admitted that the demon had distracted him, but he was now focused on finding the Lightning Empress. She, using her magic, squeezed the alligator with force, trying to stop it. In the bunker, Choi Yunbi noticed that the S-Rank beauty was scared, sensing danger for her sister. Ignoring the entreaties, Songmina ran out of the bunker to intervene in the battle. On the battlefield, the Lightning Empress, not listening to the Faithful Blade, remained to fight. The alligator approached her, and despite her resistance, she fell down helplessly. The monster grabbed her, pinning her against the wall, and the Sword Demon, having received a severe wound, collapsed, apologizing to the Sword God for his failure. Songmiri screamed in pain as she was on the verge of death. At that moment, the S-Rank hunter appeared, activating the mind control from her memories and commanding the alligator to be afraid. However, the monster was delighted to recognize her as the Abyssal Dragon's seed, and her skill failed to work due to the jingling device in her backpack that was disrupting her concentration. The S-Rank beauty threw away the device, but the second attempt to activate the space skill failed. The alligator grabbed her too, holding both sisters. Songmina, crying, begged the monster to spare her sister, but the alligator only stated that he would begin the ceremony with the Lightning Empress. He reached out his paws to her, preparing to complete the ritual. At this critical moment, the G-Class Master, who was in his sleep, heard the desperate cry of the S-Rank hunter, and instantly woke up, ready to intervene in what was happening. The G-Class Master, while in his dream, felt a strange uneasiness like Elbrus, and Generous Abundance, the beautiful girl from his vision, warned that his divine power had not yet fully recovered. She expressed concern that he might die at the hands of the Apostle Abyssal Destroyer. Suddenly, the cry of an S-Rank beauty begging for help pulled him out of his sleep. The Lightning Empress, badly wounded, lay in a pool of blood, ready to die from blood loss. The alligator completed preparations for the ritual to sacrifice her to his god. At this critical moment, the Sword God appeared, firmly declaring that this would not happen. He furiously cut off the alligator's tail using the skill God's Crushing Index Finger, which sent him into a rage. Taking advantage of the monster's confusion, Yun snatched Songmiri from its clutches. She was covered in cuts and crying, but was happy to be saved. The G-Class Master, knife in hand and a smile on his face, stepped towards the alligator, intending to cut it. The alligator, stunned by Yun's overwhelming aura, couldn't understand how he dared to act like this. He rushed into the attack, shouting "Massacre!" and declaring that the enemy was finished. The Sword God deftly parried the attacks, approached the monster's jaw, and dealt numerous small cuts with an ultra-click. Faithful Blade watched the battle and admired Yun's legendary skill. Enraged, the G-Class Master ordered the alligator to stay back, but the alligator, acknowledging his strength, stated that this was not all he was capable of. The alligator's eyes glowed red, and he proclaimed that Yun's soul would become a delicacy for the great apostle of the Abyssal Destroyer who had given him power. Yun, still furious, raised his knife, promising to taste the monster's strength, but expressed disappointment that it was using a sword instead of excellent muscles. Silent Nightmare, his ally, cheered him on, waving his predatory flowers like cheerleader pom-poms. The G-Class Master, irritated, called them useless stalkers. Suddenly, a black mat monster appeared in front of him. The alligator seemed to shrink. Yun mockingly suggested that this made him weaker and continued swinging his ultra-click. However, the blade did not leave even a scratch on the monster's skin. The sword god was taken aback, but he stubbornly continued to attack without achieving any results. Suddenly, the enemy grabbed his hand, blocking the weapon, and contemptuously called the knife a toothpick that was incapable of piercing God-given skin. The G-Class Master, on the verge of losing consciousness, was saved by the Dark Paladin Hades, who noticed his plight and attacked the alligator from behind. Yun, losing strength, wondered if his arrogance was the cause of this state, and whether it would not be better to just lie low. At that moment he heard the desperate cries of Il-ho, believing in his god and encouraging him. Other followers, including Muravisha, prayed for him, their tears and sincere pleas reaching his fading mind. Faithful Blade apologized, regretting that he was not stronger to save them. The prayers of his followers partially restored Yun's divine power. As the alligator prepared to sacrifice him, the system notified the transfer of skills, and the Sword Demon and Hades skills were added to the G-Class Master, including Heavenly Sword and Hades' Blessing. With a surge of strength, a sword appeared in Yun's hand, with which he cut off the alligator's hand that was trying to absorb his blood. The severed limb fell to the ground, and Yun realized that this was his first victory in this fight. Meanwhile, Baekgyu-hyun and the director tried unsuccessfully to break through the alligator's barrier. Even the director's skills did not help. Choi Kang-san, furiously calling the enemy Bastard Gustav, gathered all the S and A-class hunters in Gangwon-do, but they were stuck at the barrier. Baekgyu-hyun regretted the lack of a fortune-teller who could make the task easier. Suddenly they felt a powerful surge of energy, realizing that something serious was happening in the city. The sword god, having regained his strength, returned to battle with his eyes burning, full of madness and a thirst for carnage. He chopped everything around him, sending pieces of the alligator back at him. The monster, struck by his rage, noticed that his body had lost its invulnerability and had become weaker. Yun, coming closer, ripped open his stomach, cut off his hands, and completely destroyed the enemy. The alligator, screaming in disbelief, could not understand how he lost to the brat. At that moment, the G-Class Master began to rise into the air, surrounded by a golden aura, and the enemy realized that before him was a great being that he was doomed to lose to from the very beginning. The Abyssal Destroyer Apostle's follower was destroyed, and the system reported that his sacrifice was equivalent to 4 S-class followers, counting it towards the low-rank Evil God promotion mission. Progress, 2+4 out of 10. Yun, exhausted, collapsed to the ground. The director and Baekgyu-hyun ran up and panicked, thinking that he was dead, but the Dark Paladin calmed them down, explaining that the master was simply sleeping after the battle. Roses that devoured the darkness enveloped Yun's body, created by the soundless Nightmare. Nightmare explained that the saliva of his pet plant protected against curses and poisons. The G-Class Master, mentally grumbling that he was already saturated with this drowsiness, was not sure whether Nightmare was lying. Suddenly the flower began to consume him, and Yun woke up on his bed at home screaming for help. The S-rank beauty who was watching over him was happy to see him wake up, telling him that he had slept for a week. Yun felt like more time had passed. The S-rank hunter, noticing his strange state, asked him if he was having a nightmare. The sword god was surprised, and the S-rank beauty, who was ready to kiss him, beamed with joy. They were interrupted by a strong blow, and the ceiling began to collapse. Songmina, in fear, rushed to hug Yun, screaming that she was scared, while a new threat seemed to be approaching them. At that moment, Il-ho turned to God, sending him a huge, several-meter-long fish as a gift to his god, calling it a gift from the sea full of protein. Yun clutched his head and thought in irritation, "Does this ant really have nothing better to do?" The director, entering the room, was stunned by the sight of the giant fish and asked if everything was okay. The sword god assured them that everything was fine, explaining that they had sent him a shark and asked if anyone needed a fin. Using the god's crushing index finger, he destroyed the fish and threw it out of the window, stating that it fell and wasted and was no longer needed. After a few days, Yun began to notice that people were whispering behind his back, calling him the secret weapon of the Hunters Association. They discussed that he was the one who killed the SS-class monster while everyone was hiding in the bunker, and that was why the S-rank beauty became so attached to him. The director remained silent, but rumors spread. The G-class master was not pleased to hear this, but Faithful Blade, standing nearby, declared that if those around him finally realized the greatness of the sword god, they should welcome him as a teacher. Guo Mingji exclaimed that she had been in his class all this time without even knowing about his exploits. Yun's classmates immediately showed their respect as they greeted him. He, filled with pride after defeating the follower of the Apostle of the Abyssal Destroyer, replied that he had not seen them for a long time and reminded them of their self-study. The students' faces lengthened. They were afraid that he would force them to study independently again, otherwise they would be pelted with slippers. Yun chuckled, said he was joking, and announced that there would be a medical examination today. The first to arrive for examination was Heiho, a 19-year-old girl who suffered from anemia despite her robust appearance. The sword god, using the blind eye of God, diagnosed her condition, mentally calling himself a genius doctor. Using the healing god's ring finger, he instantly healed her. Heiho, feeling a surge of energy, was shocked, not understanding how he managed to do this. Yun, pleased with himself, called the next one. Lightning Empress and Faithful Blade also wanted to be examined, although the G-class master objected that he had already checked them 100 times at home. Sword Demon insisted that the school had a different atmosphere, and Yun agreed. However, Song Miri and Demon began to argue over who would be first, which angered the sword god. He suggested examining them simultaneously to stop the quarrel. At this moment, a message came from Muravishi, who had used followers' desperate plea. She begged God to save her tribe, as their strength was not enough. Yun, stunned, received a system warning of an impending disaster. The Gai tribe was attacked by the followers of the Lord of the Swamps. Among them were the Lord of the Swamps, 2,000 years old, summoned by Arachne, with infinite regeneration, Hard Beast, 666 years old, summoned by Arachne, and the Shining Light of the highest depths of heaven, 2,200 years, genderless, summoned by Arachne. The G-class master called them the Three from the Box, noting that they were stronger than the SS-class Gustav he had defeated. The system warned that the Antriniath ant tribe was at risk of being wiped out. The time until the Arachne Empire invaded with an army of 100 billion insects was 78 hours, 12 minutes, and 5 seconds. Yun, amazed by the scale of the threat, doubted that even a Diclorvos bomb would cope with such a number of beetles, and wondered whether it would be able to protect the tribe. Faithful Blade, seeing his anxiety, asked what had happened. The monsters attacking the tribe claimed to be acting in the name of their great gods, intending to destroy the followers of the evil god. The sword god clutched his head, realizing the seriousness of the situation. Suddenly, an idea came to him that in order to deal with the threat, he needed to complete the mission to promote a low-ranking good god. Progress, 6 out of 10 S-class followers and above. He realized that he urgently needed to increase the number of followers in order to strengthen his divine power and protect the tribe from the impending disaster. Having decided that all means were good, Yun sat down next to the janitor, who was eating his lunch. After analyzing it with the blind eye of God, he saw that a man, 58 years old, with muscle strength beyond reasonable limits, was grateful for saving his daughter. The sword god made a request, the contents of which remained hidden. Choi Kang-sang laughed at the strange request, but agreed to help, stating that he believed in Yun. He hoped that this would make the director a follower, but after checking with the blind eye of God, he saw no change. The director did not become a follower. Yun was puzzled, not understanding why his skill didn't work despite the key phrase. He assumed that the director did not sincerely believe in him. The S-rank hunter, while watching Yun, was told by the Lightning Empress that it was impolite to stare, and she offered her something to eat. The G-Class Master, after checking the progress of the Good God's mission, realized that he had only added Songmin and did not know where to find the other 4 followers. As a low-ranking god, he was confused as to why his skill didn't work on the bully director. He offered to strengthen the director's trust, to which the latter, intrigued, suspected hidden motives, but refused to give up his daughter. Yoon, angry, declared that he was not interested in his daughter, and Choi Kang-san advised him to give up, since not everything would go according to his wishes. The sword god countered that it wasn't about women, but the director became angry and slammed his fist on the table, indignant that his daughter didn't like Yoonu. Yu Ilshin, wondering why all his followers were so brain-dead, decided that Choi needed to believe. He mentioned that he helped students with healing, citing the example of an S-rank beauty who, thanks to his skill, began to speak and recognize others. Choi Kang-sang, curious, asked if Yun could heal someone who was dying and offered him a task to heal his old friend. The reward was the director's faith. Yun, overjoyed at the chance to get an S-class follower, agreed. They approached a girl in a grave condition, surrounded by flowers. Choi explained that it was his old friend Lee Mirai, a fortune-teller who never aged in appearance but whose hair had turned white. She was a heroine who saved Korea with him and went through many deadly battles. Lee Mirai was in an induced coma, absorbing plant energy to keep her alive, but healers and doctors were unable to help. Choi Kang-sang asked if Yoon could save her. Using the blind eye of God, the G-Class Master saw that Lee Mirai, age unknown, was in an induced coma to delay death. This was the first time he didn't see his age. Suddenly he heard her voice reproaching him for trying to find out the woman's age. Yun was surprised, and the director noticed that Lee Mirai had summoned him to her astral space. In the astral world, Lee Mirai greeted the sword god, asking if he liked this place. He realized that this was an astral projection, similar to the Lightning Empress's skill, but stronger. Lee Mirai confirmed that she knew him, calling him the embodiment of glory from her visions, but was glad that he turned out to be a kind simpleton and not the threat she planned to destroy. Yun asked why she brought him here. Lee Mirai explained that her physical body was almost dead, and she wanted to make sure it was harmless. The sword god asked if he could come back and try to heal her, but Lee Mirai warned him that he only had 68 hours, and his power was greater than he thought. He decided to use the healing ring Finger of God. A healing energy appeared around Lee Mirai and she began to rise, but the healing failed. His divine power was not enough. Yoon, scared of failure, saw Lee Mirai open her eyes, look at him, and say that she believed in him before collapsing to the floor. Lee Mirai, looking at the G-Class Master, said that he was still young and did not understand many things, but she decided to entrust her fate into his hands. At this moment, Yun received a notification. Lee Mirai became his 5th follower, equivalent to 2 S-Class, and the progress of the low-rank Good God promotion mission reached 8 out of 10, 6 plus 2. The sword god was stunned. He only had to find 2 S-Class followers. Lee Mirai added that she clearly sees that if he continues to save small worlds, he will one day be able to save his own. Yun wondered if she meant Antrinia, and Lee Mirai expressed her hope that he would save them, calling him a young god. She was looking forward to this day. Suddenly, a glow appeared around Lee Mirai and she began to disappear. Yun shouted at her to wait, but she replied that she didn't have much time and assured him that the solution to his problem was closer than he thought. Yun received a notification about the replenishment of skills, and Lee Mirai's abilities, including clairvoyance, became available to him. He was shocked when he encountered such a skill for the first time, but he was unable to use it due to his lack of divine power. He sighed and returned to the real world, completely exhausted. The director, noticing his poor condition, asked if everything was okay. The G-Class Master, remembering Lee Mirai's words about the solution being just around the corner, headed to the Academy's gym. He failed the director's quest by failing to heal Lee Mirai, but decided that he would find another way to attract followers. If the solution is close, he needs to take a closer look at his surroundings. He made a call, ordering something for delivery no later than tomorrow, spending all his divine coins and taking out a loan. Yun hoped that his plan would work. In the hall, the sword god watched Faithful Blade, who was training by swinging his blade. Yun spent 20 million on a new sword for Demon, hoping it would help him reach S-Class. As a cashback, he received the Wise Sword of Taiki from the secret collection of 1,000 blades, capable of cutting through space, and a book with teachings. However, Demon complained that this technique was too calm and did not suit his aggressive style, as his boiling blood and energy required an outlet. The G-Class Master, angry that the demon was rejecting the gift, suggested that he train under the teachings of Go-Mengji. Go-Mengji, who was in the hall, looked at Faithful Blade with admiration, thinking that he was cool. The demon noticed her gaze and asked her to come closer, but he did not mean her, but the summoned monster. Yun teased Demon by asking if he wanted another defeat, but he replied that today would be different. He stated that despite Hades being an S-Class Dark Paladin, he felt that he could defeat him thanks to the heavenly demonic Godsword technique. The duel began. The demon deftly parried Hades' blows, but the sword was knocked out of his hands and he fell. Hades praised him, noting that the demon fought well, but it was not enough. The Faithful Blade, hating his weak body, asked to wait, assuring that one day he would win. Hades agreed that he had a chance, and lifting the demon onto his shoulder, told Yun that he would take him to the infirmary. Go-Mengji ran after Hades, declaring that she would go with him. Yun thought, as Hades said, Demon has the potential to become S-Class, but it won't happen anytime soon. The system notified that the synchronization with the creation of gods had increased by 1%, and his power had reached 46%. This happened after the 2,000th bottle of potion, but the increase was only 1%, and the battle with the Arachne army was close. The G-Class Master realized that he urgently needed to strengthen his skills. He looked at the sisters, the S-Rank Beauty and the Lightning Empress. Songmina tried to remove the seal from Songmiri so that she could protect herself and not remain a victim of the Abyss Dragon. Streams of energy surged around them, but the S-Rank Huntress, exhausted, fell. The Lightning Empress immediately asked if she was okay, and she replied that she was. Yun came over and advised Songmina not to put pressure on herself, noting that she was doing a great job. The S-Rank Beauty suddenly became offended, turned away, and then shouted that she didn't want to be called by her full name. It made her feel like an old woman. Yun felt ashamed and handed her a lollipop. Songmina, like a child, happily grabbed it. The Sword God wondered when the S-Rank Huntress would return to normal, and noted that at this rate, it would be impossible to remove the seal from the Lightning Empress. The mission to promote the good god required 2 S-Class followers. If True Blade and Songmiri had reached S-Class, the quest would have been completed. There were 48 hours left before the Arachne army invaded Antrinia. There was almost no time. Yun realized that he had to prepare himself. He turned to the Lightning Empress, informing her that he would be leaving for a short time, and asked her to tell the demon that he was leaving the guard to him, as he needed to do something important: sleep. In his mind, the solution, as Lee Mirai said, was much closer than he thought. The last hope, a hellish training with stalkers in a dream where time flows more slowly. 3 months in a dream are equal to 2 hours in reality. The G-Class Master decided that this was a great opportunity to become stronger and went to the Sword God Temple to prepare for the upcoming battle. Yu Ilshin found himself in the Kingdom of Millennia, cutting through space itself, where he first met a stalker, with whom he communicated through the application. When the guy saw him, he almost died of fear, but decided not to talk about it. Walking up to the 1,000 blades that cut through space itself, he asked if the repair to his knife, which was broken in the battle with the alligator, was finished. 1,000 blades replied that the blade was badly damaged and needed more time to repair. The master asked to borrow something for a while, to which 1,000 blades named a price of 1,000,000 divine coins. Yun was amazed. The price had doubled since last time. 1,000 blades chuckled and said that there was nothing to ask for if he was so poor. Cursing the stalker and calling him a greedy person, the guy still agreed, since he had no choice. Having given away 1,000,000 coins, he wondered if the stalker was cheating him with an inflated price. After the purchase, he was given a huge stick, a wooden sword. The master got angry, shouting what to do with him. Pick his teeth? And would the monster really defeat him so easily? 1,000 blades replied that the sword was better than it looked and advised him to try it. This 850-year-old sword belonged to Huashan himself, which sounded impressive. In a hurry, Yun decided to test the sword by activating the Ultra Blade. 1,000 blades explained that when the synchronization with the sword reaches 50%, a miracle will occur. The more he trains in this world, the faster his synchronization will grow. In his dream, the synchronization speed actually increased, and the boy felt that this toothpick, the training sword of the founder of the Huashan sect, was trying to tell him something. He was intrigued by what miracle awaited him. Thousand Blades chuckled, announced the beginning of the hellish preparations, and suggested attacking her. There were 30 hours left before the invasion of Antrinia. The master trained, but he couldn't even touch the Thousand Blades. He praised him for blocking 1,000 of her attacks and announced the next stage, 10,000 attacks. Yun continued training while drinking potions. There were 2 hours left and he became stronger, beginning to see the weaknesses of his opponent. Finally, he got close and made his first successful attack on the vulnerable point. Thousand Blades praised him, offering to share the potion, but the boy refused, saying that he should buy it himself. In response, Thousand Blades grabbed him, lifted him up, and told him it was time to rest, sending him to the Eternal Seeker of Truth. In the Temple of Muscles, the Eternal Seeker of Truth declared that before the battle, it was necessary to work on the muscles, and began to beat Yun as if he were a shameful slave. He praised him for his hardened muscles and advised him to lift a 2-ton weight to consolidate the result. The master, surprised that he was trying so hard for the sake of the ants, still hoped for success. After doing 1 pull-up, he felt his muscles grow several times and was able to lift the weight once. The Eternal Seeker applauded, but said a kick in the pants was needed to avoid muscle loss. There were 10 hours left and Yun headed to the Silent Nightmare. The Silent Nightmare, excited, thought that the guy would make him sit in the stomach of his flower again. Yun, realizing that he couldn't fall asleep, otherwise he would return to reality, headed towards the huge flower, which again tried to swallow him. The soundless nightmare, blushing, asked to be tougher next time. After several hours of training, there was only 1 minute left before the invasion. The master, clutching his head, realized that the synchronization had not reached 50%. 1% was missing, despite drinking more than 2,000 potions. In desperation, he decided to make a final push, fighting the Silent Nightmare as hard as he could. Nightmare trembled with anticipation, enjoying the blows. Yun, testing his strength, ordered to give damn 1%. There was 1 second left before the invasion. Yu Ilshin received a notification that synchronization with the wooden sword had reached 49.9%. In desperation, he thought he would go crazy if he didn't get to 50%. The Silent Nightmare, having satisfied himself that his stick was the best, announced that the synchronization had reached 50% and the guy could now go to Antrinia for rescue. The master was surprised how everything happened so suddenly and wondered where the promised miracle was. Had he been deceived again? The system reported that as a result of the synchronization, the intelligence and endurance of his A-class followers, Sword Demon and Song Miri Nim, had increased. Yun wondered if this was really a miracle, but noted that if they reached S-class, it would definitely be a miracle. Suddenly, a new notification came calling for attention. The offensive of the Arachne Imperial Army had begun, and from that moment on, a holy battle had begun, with his life at stake. The guy realized that he urgently needed to move to Antrinia, but first he remembered that he had been promised to deliver something to the roof of the school. Meanwhile, in Antrinia, the monsters were advancing. The terrible Lord of the Swamps and his minions, led by the goddess Arachne, approached the fortress of the evil god, erected by his followers. The goddess, smiling, noted that the fortress seemed impregnable and ordered the captain of the infectious flies to go forward. The captain of the flies assured that he would not let them down, and his team rushed into the attack, intending to destroy all the insignificant creatures. The ant, frightened, watched them approach. There were too many of them, and she was afraid that even her sacred power would not stop the enemies. She decided to obey the order of the great Yu Ilshin and stay in the fortress, and began to pray for him to come to her aid soon. The other ants also prayed, but one of them pessimistically noted that even a stone would not withstand the cursed infection of Beelzebub, and they would all be doomed if they did not escape. The flies, in turn, prayed to their god Zaraz, asking him to send a curse on their enemies. The captain of the flies gave the order to open fire. The infection blessed by their god was to strike the enemy. But suddenly the dark clouds in the sky parted, and a huge human hand appeared, stepping on the flies. The goddess Arachne immediately realized that this was the master himself, whom she called the evil god. With one step he trampled hundreds of flies, and passing through the space, summoned 100 cans of insect spray. Yun, laughing hysterically, declared that the exterminator is on site, and thank God that the product was delivered on time. The flies, in a panic, did not understand what was written on the cans and asked if this was the language of an evil god. They realized that they would not be able to defeat him in this battle, and would definitely die. The captain of the flies ordered a retreat, feeling sick from the poisonous gas. The sword god used God's crushing index finger in combination with telekinesis, opening all the spray cans. The observers realized that he could turn their power on and off. The smoke began to spread and the flies choked, realizing that this was a deadly poison, the most terrible that they knew. They screamed in pain, trying to run away to avoid touching the poisonous cloud. The flies, worshipping their god, could not believe that their enemy was the legendary god. The goddess Arachne shouted for no one to panic, threatening to personally send the fugitives to the next world. Yun was amazed by the number of flies, thinking that there were enough of them to cover the entire island of Yewido. The goddess, in a rage, summoned the hard beast, one of her followers, who, having acquired wings, began flapping them, trying to redirect the poisonous gas. The G-class master became angry, realizing that the gas could harm his ants too. He decided to take immediate action by activating the god's index finger with telekinesis. The jars of poison flew up, but the attack of the hard beast destroyed some of the insecticide. Yun mentally lamented that his money was lost and almost poisoned his own ants. The goddess, calling him a cursed evil god, accused him of using dirty tricks. The guy froze in fear, not understanding what this fucking cat with wings was doing. Yu Il-shin, overcome with rage, watched as the enemy, the shining light of the highest profound heaven, began to devour the victims. He thought that the enemy was becoming stronger by devouring his own, and he considered this cruel. The goddess Arachne, knowing about the possible losses, was ready to sacrifice millions of her flies if it would give her divine power. She ordered the dragonflies to release a squad of blind suicides. Yu Il-shin, irritated that his precious insecticides were wasted because of the overgrown cat, decided to take revenge and twist off the monster's tail. He tried to use the skill crushing finger but froze, seeing a huge machine on which sat a goddess, surrounded by a squad of blind suicides. These creatures, capable of crushing rocks, could seriously injure him even if they did not kill him. The goddess gave the order to attack, and the flies rushed at the hero. Yu Il-shin activated Steel Body. His muscles increased, his body became stronger. The flies crashing into him could not penetrate his defense. The Eternal Truth Seeker, watching, praised him, reminding him that the steel body was first-class steel, capable of withstanding everything. The flies, despite being outnumbered, continued to attack. The hero used God's condemning middle finger, and fiery flames erupted from his hands, setting his enemies on fire. He then used the multiple god's thumb to increase the fire, which consumed the flies. Yu Il-shin emerged from the flames unharmed with a shining steel body. The opponents, seeing the flames approaching, decided to retreat, but the hero felt that his strength was waning. He checked the mission to promote a low-ranking evil god. The progress was only half, although there were billions of enemies. He hoped to destroy them easily, but more was needed to advance. Synchronization made him 50% stronger, but it wasn't enough. Yu Il-shin suggested that the exhaustion was caused by overuse of divine power. The light shining highest profound heaven, enraged that the hero dared to use a flame similar to his master's power, approached. The goddess raised her hand, calling on the followers of the great god to stop the evil god at any cost. The fire chariot agreed to fulfill her will, asking for 100 million sacrifices. The goddess, despite the protests of her subordinates, shouted at them to be silent, declaring that death for the sake of the Empire's victory was their duty. The monster began to absorb the victims, releasing a blast of fire. Yu Il-shin didn't notice how the shining light approached, becoming even larger. A fiery whirlwind rushed towards the hero, who tried to use God's crushing index finger in response, but the system reported that the divine power was insufficient. Frozen in horror, he did not understand how it happened. A fiery whirlwind struck, throwing him back several meters. The goddess rejoiced, declaring that punishment had befallen the evil god and her vengeance would be accomplished. The hero, not believing that he had given in, thought that he would lose. The enemies idolized their master, and he was too weak to protect even the ants. Muravisha ran up to Yu Il-shin, begging him to wake up, reminding him that they needed him. The hero, surprised by her presence, since he had ordered her to stay in the fortress, saw her attempting to cast Healing Finger, but the activation failed. Shining Light blocked the healing. Antface tried again, but to no avail. The monster, calling her annoying, stated that Yu Il-shin would be an excellent victim for his master. The ants continued to pray to their god, believing in him. Il-ho, joining in the prayers, asked to be allowed to join the battle. Yu Il-shin remembered him and decided to call him, hoping that he had enough strength. Concentrating, he activated the teleportation. Il-ho appeared, stating that he had come to answer the call of his god. The call lasted for 60 minutes. The ant, confident in himself, boasted that he had crushed many monsters in the tower. Yu Il-shin, proud of his height, noticed how Il-ho stood boldly in front of Shining Light. But the monster, not seeing the ant as a threat, instantly devoured it. Yu Il-shin realized that things were bad. Not even a second passed, and Il-ho died. At this moment, 1,000 blades cutting through space itself reported that Yu Il-shin's knife had been repaired, and for the naive sponsor, the delivery was free. The hero opened his eyes and saw before him a huge weapon with incredible power, ready to change the course of the battle. Yu Il-shin suddenly felt a surge of strength that allowed him to rise. The light shining of the highest depths of heaven, noticing this, realized that the situation was becoming dangerous. Yu Il-shin, without wasting any time, activated the Sword Demon's skill transfer skill. The opponents froze, realizing that things were taking a serious turn. The hero used Heavenly Demon Authority, concentrating a powerful attack. The enemies, feeling threatened, tried to retreat, but Yu Il-shin, surprised by their fear, decided to strike faster. In an instant, he cut off the Shining Light. The monster, not believing in his death, mourned his precious body created by his master. Another enemy entered the battle, then several more, but one after another they fell. The fierce beast, enraged, declared that Yu Il-shin would pay for Il-ho's death, and the hero, burning with anger, vowed to get to him, calling him a puss. Yu Il-shin understood that the problem was the lack of divine power to reuse the Heavenly Demon Authority. His head was splitting and his gaze fell on the hard beast, which had exhausted most of its power. The hero decided to attack him, but the monsters united to finish off the weakened enemy. Suddenly, the hard beast felt a strange, frightening aura coming from Yu Il-shin, who was surrounded by a blinding, fiery glow. The main character himself did not understand where this power came from, but he received a notification. The seal was removed from Song Miri Nim, and she was awarded an incredible potential. He smiled happily. A miracle had happened. The mission to cultivate a low-ranking good god has reached 9 out of 10 S-class and above followers thanks to Song Mina. Her faith restored his divine power. Yu Il-shin, turning to the sword demon, urged him not to fall behind, believing in his potential. With a new surge of strength, he swung his sword. The hard beast, recognizing his monstrous strength, decided to avoid close combat and began to retreat. Suddenly, the hero heard a strange sound and turned around. Another enemy, the Lord of the Abyssal Swamps, snuck up from behind. This three-headed snake-like monster with infinite regeneration declared that Yu Il-shin's sword would not help him, and approached, confident in his immortality. The main character, exhausted, understood that the fight would be difficult. The Lord of the Swamps scoffed, thinking that his enemy was trembling with fear, and ordered him to die. Yu Il-shin took a fighting stance, but suddenly his sword spoke, indignant that it was called an ordinary piece of iron. The sword began to speak and called the Lord an insignificant creature. The hero was stunned. Could the sword really speak? The bishop, having become interested, decided to take the weapon as a souvenir. But the sword, calling him a serpentine misunderstanding, declared that his immortality meant nothing and offered to try it, as if it lacked a poker. Yu Il-shin suspected that the sword was not possessed by the founder of the Huashan sect, but by some psychopath, especially when the sword began to laugh hysterically. The Lord of the Swamps, offended, asked what was funny, to which the sword replied that the snake was already a corpse. Black energy began to accumulate around the monster's body, preventing him from controlling himself. The Lord did not understand how his blessed regeneration was failing, considering it impossible. The sword mockingly declared that the heavenly demon's authority was limitless, and the enemy was doomed from the moment he was injured. With one swing, Yu Il-shin cut off the Lord's head, and his body was unable to regenerate. The system is notified that the Lord of the Abyssal Swamp has been killed, his energy has been absorbed, and the victim has been equalized to 2 S-class followers. The low-rank evil god cultivation mission had reached 8 out of 10, 3 plus 5. Yu Il-shin, feeling a surge of strength, smiled happily, anticipating what would happen when he reached all 10. Suddenly he felt a dark aura and a thirst for blood. The hard beast, flapping his wings, declared that it was too late now. His wings of wind would tear the hero to shreds. Yu Il-shin froze in bewilderment, preparing for a new threat. Yu Il-shin quickly responded to the threat of the hard beast, who called him agile and even praised him, but then immediately sharpened his claws threateningly. The main character, blazing with anger, declared that he would tear off the cat's tail as soon as he caught it. Suddenly the monster felt a strange sensation inside himself and begged, asking for it to stop. Yu Il-shin, not understanding what was being said, sarcastically replied that he would only stand on the grave of an enemy. But the hard beast began to writhe in pain. His stomach was torn apart from the inside. He lost control and, unable to stay in the air, fell to the ground, screaming in agony. His eyes widened in horror, and Il-ho burst out from his stomach using his powerful muscles. Yu Il-shin was overjoyed that his follower was alive. The ant, proudly declaring that he would always find a way out, even if he was eaten, joked that he had simply smashed the enemy's belly. The main character gave him a class sign and called Il-ho super cool. At this point the sword spoke, agreeing that the ant was cool, especially compared to God himself. Yu Il-shin, puzzled, did not understand why his sword was so sarcastic in what he was saying. He demanded to know who this voice was. The sword, after a theatrical pause, hinted that the hero should open his eyes and prick up his ears, but did not reveal his essence. Yu Il-shin, perplexed, suspected that this was a confession and demanded to speak faster. At first, he thought that it was a fragment of the 1,000 blades cutting through the space itself because of the long tongue. But the voice was different. Turning to 1,000 blades, he received an evasive answer. The stalker chose to remain silent. The hero, not understanding how to interpret all this, jokingly threatened to demand a refund. Meanwhile, the light-shining highest profound heaven, having partially regenerated, could not believe that a pitiful insect had destroyed his body. He turned to the goddess Arachne, demanding more sacrifices for restoration in order to kill Yu Il-shin. The goddess agreed to give 10, then 100 million flies. But the monster said that this was not enough. He needed the entire 100 billion of her army. Arachne, stunned, could not understand his intentions, but he repeated that she should sacrifice everyone in the name of their gods. Suddenly the fiery flame split, engulfing her followers, and Shining Light decided to sacrifice them himself. The goddess objected, shouting that this was not part of their agreement, and the emperor would never forgive such a thing. But the monster ordered her to be silent, demanding sacrifices. Arachne, confused, did not understand what was happening. The fiery head of the monster increased several times, becoming even more threatening. Il-ho concentrated, activated his muscles, and lifted the huge rock, declaring that he would deal with this worthless bastard. He threw a stone at the Shining Light, but it disintegrated into flames. The monster laughed, praising the strength of its true master. Il-ho, realizing that he couldn't help, asked Yu Il-shin what to do. The hero's sword mockingly declared that there was nothing complicated, just go and kill the firebrand whose flame was nothing special. Yu Il-shin was surprised. Did this pillar of fire mean nothing to the sword? He suspected that the voice in the sword was clearly not in his right mind, but he had no choice. Trusting the sword, which claimed that there was no creature it could not cut, the hero decided to try. He swung, activating the transmission of the sword demon skill, Heavenly Demon Authority. Demonic energy ignited around the blade, and a cutting bolt rushed towards the fiery head. But Shining Light, not feeling the damage, laughed, asking if that was all. Yu Il-shin, foreseeing this outcome, realized that the sword did not help. He mentally cursed 1,000 blades, whose free promises sounded like a lie. The hero wondered if this was the end for the Antrinians. The protagonist, in despair, understood that he was unable to defeat the Shining Light of the highest depths of heaven. But suddenly the flying head of the monster felt a powerful cut of blue energy tearing it apart from the inside. He realized that his precious body was being destroyed, and there was a deafening explosion. The sword, turning to Yu Il-shin, triumphantly declared that here it was, the true power, and called on him to tremble before its might. The hero, mentally noting that he had contributed his own strength to the attack, decided to remain silent. He was glad he remained conscious and did not collapse in a faint, as he had after the fight with the alligator. Wondering if he had become stronger, Yu Il-shin received a series of notifications. The tears of generous abundance, her worried look, and the soundless nightmare warned that it was too early to relax. Raising his head, the main character was surprised to learn new information from the system. That in Antrinia there were two brothers, gods of the sun, who had been at odds for thousands of years until one was sealed in the chariot of fire. Yu Il-shin realized that he had unwittingly released one of them. Shining Light was, in fact, the god of the sun. 1,000 blades slashing through space itself explained that this was just an echo of the past. But given his high divine rank, it was better for the hero to give up and die right now. Yu Il-shin was taken aback by such advice, especially after all the money he had spent. He admitted that the situation had indeed become tense. Io Hero had used up the last of his divine power for one last attack. Remembering the words of a great man that even if the heavens open, there will always be a window of life, he wondered who could have said that. Light Shining, blazing with anger, declared that Yu Il-shin dared to break the fire chariot bestowed by his master and would burn him even if the entire world burned down. At this moment, the protagonist noticed the window of life. Il-ho was standing on the head of the hard beast. The ant, watching the monster, understood that it was too strong and was afraid of being burned to ashes. Yu Il-shin ordered Il-ho to stand still and find the victim, assuring him that there was nothing to fear. The ant responded enthusiastically and offered the tough beast as a sacrifice, asking God to accept the monster. Yu Il-shin, completely satisfied, absorbed the cat's body with his finger, beginning to charge himself with its energy. Il-ho presented a tribute, a hard beast equivalent to 2 S-class creatures. The hero smiled. The mission to promote a low-ranking evil god was completed. The progress reached 10 out of 10, killing S-class creatures and above. His body was filled with incredible energy, and the system declared the mission accomplished. Yu Il-shin was given the title of a low-ranking evil god. Shining Light, despite his defeat, continued to claim that he could not be defeated. But the hero, shining with new strength, was ready for the next step. Il-ho, rejoicing, strengthened his faith in God. But the shining light of the highest depths of heaven, without giving in, declared that resistance was useless, and called on them to burn together with their miserable world. The protagonist, telling the monster to shut up, activated God's condemning middle finger, adding that it was already hot, and ordered it to die down. Shining Light, calling him a bastard, mockingly asked if the hero really thought this would work. Yu Il-shin realized that the attack might not be enough. The monster was too strong, perhaps because of the energy of 100 million victims, or because it was a high-ranking god before being sealed. As a low-ranking god, the hero was at a loss as to how to defeat his opponent. Light Shining mockingly asked if Yu Il-shin really thought he would flinch from such ridiculous attacks, and released waves of fire and lava that melted the walls of the ant fortress. The protagonist tried to use heavenly demon authority, but the skill didn't work. He wondered whether he should use the gift from the 1,000 blades that cut through space itself. But the sword suddenly spoke, indignant at being called a gift, and declared that it could not cut the flame. At this moment, a sword demon appeared on the battlefield, who had been training hard all this time. He was ready to strike, having comprehended the second kata of the way of the heavenly demon sword. Turning to his master, the demon pointed the sword, emitting powerful energy. Yu Il-shin noticed that the sword demon had a new weapon, and was shocked to see the second kata of the heavenly demon sword path. This awakened in him memories of his true self. Suddenly, the sword in the hero's hands began to transform, and from it emerged a master who proclaimed himself a heavenly demon. Yu Il-shin, stunned, thought it was nonsense, but activated the blind eye of God, starting the download of the heavenly demon's history, which was about to be revealed to him. He was shocked by the story of the heavenly demon, and learned that he killed his daughter, who became a follower of the god of destruction. and then destroyed all her supporters and committed suicide. The hero even became emotional, feeling sorry for the heavenly demon. It's no wonder he's gone crazy after such a tragedy. The system's note stated that the heavenly demon had been searching for a target for redemption for millennia, but due to deception, he lost his memories, which were returned thanks to the sword demon. Yu Ilshin, puzzled by the mention of deception, demanded details, feeling that he knew something but could not remember. Thousand Blades, cutting through space itself, tried to convert the heavenly demon to their faith, but he, hating liars, refused. In retaliation, Thousand Blades stripped him of his memories, sealing him in one of her blades and forcing him to serve her. The protagonist, indignant, called Thousand Blades a brute, and the sword demon, hearing about the sword, thought about it. His awakening returned the heavenly demon's memory. The heavenly demon, praising Yu Ilshin as a worthy disciple, declared that through him his revenge could be accomplished. He asked if the young god knew about this. The hero vowed to know and harness the power of the blade. The heavenly demon approved of him and allowed him to use his power, recognizing Yu Ilshin as a worthy owner. Transforming back into a blade, he began to absorb the energy, acknowledging the hero's dominance. The heavenly demon became his follower. The light shining highest profound heaven, not understanding what kind of power was in front of him, was faced with the concentrated strike of the heavenly demon directed by Yu Ilshin. The system is notified that the mission to promote a low-ranking good god has been completed, and 10 S-class followers have been collected. Yu Ilshin was given the title of low-ranking good god. The awakening of the sword demon was the final piece of the puzzle. The solution to the problem was indeed at hand. The monster, however, scoffed, claiming that Yu Ilshin was no match for him, having borrowed the strength of a decrepit old man, and called all insects insignificant. The hero, continuing to concentrate his power, created a shield of blue flame, capable of withstanding the enemy's normal fire. The sky demon suggested using Avicii, Naraka's worst nightmare, the second kata of the Way of the Sky Demon sword. The shining light released its flame, but Yu Ilshin's blue flame cut through it. The monster, confused, assured that the master would heal his scratches, but felt the heat of the blue flame consuming him. Screaming in pain, he realized that he couldn't cope and disappeared into the sky. Yu Ilshin watched him disappear heroically, realizing that he had protected Antrinia. The ants of Antrinia rejoiced, thanking God for the miracle of salvation and praising him. Ilho, who had no doubt of victory, exhaled, deciding that it was time to retreat, leaving the rest to them. The ants agreed and began their duties. The system informed Yu Ilshin that he had won the divine battle, and rumors of his greatness would soon spread throughout the world. A new mission has opened, promoting a mid-rank good and evil god. The hero, satisfied, went home, laughing hysterically at his new blade. Thousand Blades, cutting through space itself, angrily accused him of stealing, but Yu Ilshin only laughed, saying that he fought and ran into trouble. Thousand Blades countered that he didn't fight to restore the heavenly demon's memories, but the hero called her a cheapskate, demanding a free repair. The stalker, indignant, declared that the repairs now cost 500 million divine coins. Yu Ilshin, indignant at the price, asked the other stalkers for their opinions, claiming that it was not worth even 10 million. The silent nightmare suggested a familiar blacksmith, and the eternal seeker of truth happily agreed to repair it for 5 million. The hero, pleased with the competition, noted how easy it was to find something cheaper. Thousand Blades, warning that the seeker would need a year, lowered the price to 10 million. Yu Ilshin offered 3 million, and after some arguing they came to an agreement. Thousand Blades, shaking with anger, agreed, and the hero admitted that compared to how much the stalker had squeezed out of him, it was a trifle. At that moment, the director called, shouting for Yu Ilshin to immediately come to the Hunters Association. They found a clutch of crocodile eggs belonging to Gustav, the same alligator that the hero had to fight earlier. Yu Ilshin, heading to the Hunters Association in his suit, noticed a billboard with Songmina's picture on it. Together with the sword demon, he arrived at the building, where he was unexpectedly met by the sisters Songmin and Song Miri Nim along with the director. They greeted each other warmly. Choi Kang-san hurriedly told everyone to quickly go inside to discuss the situation with Gustav's eggs. The protagonist asked the sword demon to wait outside the conference room since he was not a member of the association. The demon agreed and stayed outside. The hall was filled with national S-class heroes, all for the sake of some eggs. Upon entering, Yu Il-shin saw an acquaintance, Baek Yu-hyun, who invited him to sit next to Songmina and Songmiri Nim. However, Songmina grabbed the hero by the hand and refused, saying that he was already sitting with them. The head of the association called on everyone to sit down, as the egg was about to be delivered. Yu Il-shin, having taken a seat at the table, began to look at the heroes and noticed a girl in a penguin mask. Thinking it was a joke, he decided to use Blind Eye of God, but the evaluation failed and no information about it appeared. The hero was surprised, not understanding who she was. At that moment, a huge egg, covered in crystals and wrapped in chains for safety, was brought into the hall. It was the egg of the SS-class monster Gustav, the same alligator that had recently attacked the academy. He was transported from Africa and was the only one of hundreds of eggs that had not yet hatched. All efforts were thrown into finding the rest of Gustav's cubs. Yu Il-shin was stunned. In the previous battle with Gustav, he barely survived, and now there were 99 similar creatures. Suddenly, the egg began to shake and the heroes froze, expecting it to hatch. The egg cracked and a small alligator jumped out. Instead of fear, everyone began to admire his cute appearance, wanting to take him home. The cub uttered his first word, which everyone took for something cute. But thanks to his abilities, Yu Il-shin translated it into the alligator language, meaning that he had found his mother's sworn enemy, the hero himself. Suddenly, the cub broke free from its chains, rushed towards Yu Il-shin and tried to attack, wanting to kill. The protagonist watched as the monster approached, but the space around him seemed to slow down. He remembered that he had become stronger now that he was a low-ranking god, and decided that the crocodile was no match for him. Activating the god's crushing index finger, he pointed it at the cub's mouth. He, realizing that the enemy was too strong, became frightened and recoiled. At that moment, another hero, Gal Chung-ryuk, an S-class hunter, intervened in the battle and threw the alligator off the table with his fist. The cub, realizing that he needed to run, found himself under attack by Shin Yu, another hunter, who bound his body with magic. He grinned, noting that the cute face had almost deceived her, and asked Yu Il-shin if everything was okay with him. Yu Il-shin, feeling ashamed, realized that the other heroes had eliminated the threat faster than he could raise a finger. It was incredible, Songmina cried, frightened by the crocodile, and Songmiri Nim comforted her, saying that the monster looked scarier than it was. The cub, meanwhile, was also crying, begging to be saved and calling on the gods. Gal Chung-ryuk, seeing that he was alive, came closer, intending to finish him off, but was stopped. Go Saduk, an immortal master and S-class hunter whose strength was equal to an entire army, intervened in the matter. He ordered everyone to stop, interrupting the massacre of the cub. Gal Chung-ryuk, outraged by Go Saduk's interference, asked why he stopped him. Go Saduk calmly replied that he did not want the cub to be harmed further, as he intended to dissect it and study it. Gal Chung-ryuk sarcastically retorted that he also wanted a lot of things, for example, to finish off the crocodile on the spot. And now what? Go Saduk laughed, reproaching the young ones for their lack of respect, and in anger he released his power, surrounding him with an aura. He asked menacingly if they needed to taste death in order to behave properly. The director, alarmed, asked if the old man was going to summon Yaksha, the nature spirit, and ordered him to stop. But Go Saduk said it was too late. Gal Chung-ryuk, without retreating, summoned his armor spirit, preparing for battle. The director, standing between them, demanded that they stop quarreling, wondering why they were fighting with each other. Yu Il-shin, watching this passion flare up, regretted that he didn't have popcorn. The spectacle promised to be exciting. But out of the corner of his eye he noticed a small crocodile, still trembling with terror and crying, begging God to save him. A notification appeared before the hero. Gustav's cub had become his new follower, dying of fear, and saving him could bring a small miracle. Intrigued, Yu Il-shin decided to take action, although he did not know how to do it. The system suggested that the low-ranking god show mercy to the mortal who was thirsting for salvation, indicating that the salvation could be carried out unnoticed. The hero agreed, and a teleporting force appeared around the alligator, carrying him away. Yu Il-shin, at first angry, thinking he had been tricked, received a notification. A baby had appeared in his ant world, looking incredibly cute. Looking around, he realized that because of the quarrel, no one had noticed the disappearance of the crocodile. Go Saduk and Gal Chung-ryuk continued to argue with the director, who demanded that they stop. The main character, realizing that there would be trouble if the loss was noticed, frantically looked for a way out. Suddenly, a girl in a penguin mask appeared behind him. Turning around abruptly, Yu Ilshin asked why she was peeping, and, ordering her to remain silent, declared that he would explain everything himself. But the girl just raised her hand to attract his attention, and to his surprise she simply said, "Penguin, hi," and left. The hero, dumbfounded, thought that the S-class was full of weirdos, but it seemed that she didn't care about the missing crocodile. At that moment, an explosion was heard in the hall. It was the sword demon who burst in with a question to his god whether help was needed. Yu Ilshin, delighted by his appearance, decided to use this as an excuse to leave. Shin Yu, curious, asked if this was the same swordsman who had fought earlier, but the sword demon denied it, claiming that he had been confused. Shin Yu, not believing, insisted, calling him his friend, but the demon again waved him off. Yu Ilshin, surprised by their acquaintance, decided that it was none of his business. He had enough of his own problems. Approaching the sword demon, he sternly asked if he understood where he was and why he had caused the pogrom. Grabbing him by the scruff of the neck, the hero said that he would talk to him at home, and they began to leave. The sword demon apologized to God, asking to let him die for not following the order, but Yu Ilshin calmed him down, telling him not to get upset and to remain silent for now. In his heart, the hero was grateful for the opportunity to escape. At that moment, the director shouted, asking where the damn crocodile was, and Go Sadok, in a rage, declared that everyone would die today. Yu Ilshin, pleased that he had managed to leave, headed to the medical office of the Hunters Association, enjoying the silence. On his phone, he watched his people. The ant, pleased, believed that God had sent them a creature and promised to raise a good little crocodile. The hero named the baby Croaky and found a mana-blocking dog collar for him. Muravisha assured him that she would take care of his upbringing herself, and Yu Ilshin wondered what kind of little miracle was meant. Was it really the fact that the crocodile fit into his mobile phone? Shin Yu entered the medical room, noticing that the guy was playing the game, and asked if it was that interesting. Coming closer, she said that she wanted to know something, and a flame burst into flame in his hand, spreading throughout the room. Yu Ilshin, surprised, asked if the S-classes really threatened to fire at every question, and suggested asking directly. Shin Yu, looking at the protagonist, stated that he was interested in something and expressed hope that his answer would satisfy him. Yu Ilshin, agreeing, asked to ask, calling himself a man without prejudice and a pacifist. Shin Yu clarified that he wanted to know what connected him with the strong sword, that is, the sword demon. The hero thought he was his god, and the demon was his fanatical follower, but decided that it was better not to tell the truth. He lied and said that they were colleagues. He was a teacher, and the demon was his official assistant, which was technically true. However, the flames around Shin Yu flared up even more. Yu Ilshin didn't understand why he was asking questions threateningly. Shin Yu narrowed his eyes and wondered if the hero was a member of the Three Heroes Society, a hint at something like the Triad. Yu Ilshin, without going into details, decided that it did not concern him. Shin Yu, deciding that he did not understand the words, came closer and swung his hand. The protagonist, noticing the slow movement of her hand, was not in the mood to fight. He activated the transmission of the skill Steel Body, but at that moment a sword demon, sensing a threat to his god, burst into the room. Outraged, the demon asked why Shin Yu was bothering the sword god and swung his blade. Shin Yu, on the contrary, was delighted to recognize the demon, but he angrily ordered her to stop talking nonsense. He continued, asking how he was doing and why he hadn't answered his calls. The demon, fighting back with his sword, explained that he blocked it because it was bothering him. Shin Yu, surprised but not shocked, analyzed his technique and noted that he still had not reached her level. The demon, irritated, accused her of constantly disturbing his master and asked if she wanted to die. Shin Yu, hearing about the master, was surprised, not knowing who he was talking about. The sword demon, in a rage, called her ignorant and declared that Yu Ilshin was his master, the greatest swordsman, the sword god who had achieved enlightenment in the art of wielding a blade. He demanded that Shin Yu, who considered himself a swordsman, bow down before him. The guy knew about the Three Heroes community but didn't expect such fanaticism. Yu Ilshin, perplexed, asked what the Three Heroes Society was. Was it really a bacon lovers club? Shin Yu, looking at the hero, suspected that because of him the demon had become crazy, and decided to expose him. Turning to Yu Il-shin, he said that if he was the sword god, he could easily dodge her attack. Using the snake sword school, she launched a poisonous attack. The sword demon called to show the worm the greatness of the master, stating that Shin Yu can only be reached through slaps. The protagonist, getting up from his bed, decided that since Shin Yu wanted to test his strength so much, he would show how much stronger he had become after saving the ants. The enemy is an S-class, so he won't die but will become an ideal training dummy. After activating the transmission of the steel body skill, he felt his shirt tear and his muscles grow exponentially. Shin Yu, after assessing it, guessed that it was a technique of the Three Heroes Society, but called the skill dull and unknown, assuring that her snake school would stop it. He attacked, but Yu Il-shin, understanding that muscle mass usually reduces mobility, in his case gave him an advantage in speed. Remembering the snake's fang, he raised his fist, confident that he would smash it with one blow. At that moment, Song Mina burst into the room, interrupting the attack, and was indignant about what the hell they were making noise for, preventing her from taking a nap. Yu Il-shin remembered that Song Mina wanted to rest. Shin Yu pointed at him, calling him bad and accusing him of bad behavior, threatening to activate mind control. Yu Il-shin tried to stop her, but Song Mina, not listening, declared that anyone who gets their god must die. Red demonic energy swirled around her, and Shin Yu froze in fear. Shin Yu, choking on Song Mina's demonic energy, turned to the sword demon and collapsed. The demon came closer, checked his pulse, and made sure that Shin Yu was alive. He was not one to give up easily. Yu Il-shin breathed a sigh of relief, not wanting to be accused of murder. However, the sword demon, outraged that Shin Yu had disturbed the master, declared that he would throw him away and return. The protagonist asked to stop, intending to heal Shin Yu with the healing god's ring finger, but the demon did not listen. Yu Il-shin only hoped that he would not finish off the victim, because the demon promised to behave decently. Song Mina approached the hero and grabbed his cheeks, asking if everything was okay. He replied that yes, and she, smiling, assured him that her little sister would protect him. Yu Il-shin wondered, isn't Song Mina the older sister, and isn't Song Miri Nim the younger? At that moment, Song Miri Nim burst into the room, anxiously asking if everything was okay with the master. She felt a colossal flow of energy and, noticing a pool of blood, panicked and assumed that someone had been killed. Song Mina rushed to her younger sister, saying that she wanted to go home because she was scared. Yu Il-shin asked Song Miri Nim to take his sister home, and she agreed. Meanwhile, the hero began to wash away the pool of blood, grumbling that he was God and did not have to clean up. Suddenly, generous abundance sent him a heart, praising him for his good deed. Yu Il-shin, touched, called him his only friend. At this moment, Guo Mengji entered the room and saw the blood. She froze, but the hero calmed her down, lying that he had simply fallen. He noticed that Guo Mengji was tense, clearly hiding something, and asked what was wrong, asking her not to be afraid and just tell him. Guo Mengji explained that her grandfather wanted to meet him, and they had to escape. Yu Il-shin was surprised. Why was someone's grandfather looking for him, and why run away? Hades burst out from Guo Mengji's talisman and greeted the hero. She explained that her grandfather noticed Hades' growth and decided to talk to Yu Il-shin, just like her sister. Their family had already arrived, and Guo Mengji, in horror, said that it was time for her to run, wishing the hero good luck and mentally apologizing to the teacher. Yu Il-shin, not understanding what was happening, looked out the broken window and saw Go Saduk getting out of the car. He froze, remembering the old man from the Hunters Association. Their last names were the same. He was the guildmaster of the Immortals. Next to him stood a strange girl with the makeup of a dead person. The academy's director, Choi Kang-sang, greeted them, but wondered why Go Saduk had come to his sacred school, and whether he understood where he had come. Go Saduk replied that the principal had nothing to worry about. He wanted to inspect the place where his granddaughter was studying and talk to someone. Choi Kang-sang, wary, asked who exactly Go Saduk wanted to meet and asked if Yu Il-shin was a student there. Go Saduk confirmed that he was the one looking for. The main character, having gone to the director's office, feverishly came up with an excuse. He thought about playing dumb, as if it wasn't him. Go Saduk immediately asked if they had met recently and inquired how old he was. Yu Il-shin, trying to act natural, answered that he was 23 years old, and noted that a 3-year age difference was ideal. The girl in the strange dress, with the makeup of a dead person, told her grandfather that she was embarrassed by this 3-year difference. Yu Il-shin, not understanding why this was ideal, was perplexed. Wasn't the old man 30 years older than him? Go Saduk, smiling, declared that Yu Il-shin was now his future grandson and son-in-law, and expressed his pleasure at meeting him. The hero, stunned, was not at all happy with this turn of events. Yu Il-shin, stunned by Go Saduk's words, couldn't believe that he was being called the future son-in-law. Does he really have to marry this scary girl with the death makeup? He categorically refused, stating that he preferred solitude and was not interested in marriage. Having apologized, the hero emphasized that he was against the wedding from that very moment. Go Saduk, surprised, explained that he heard that thanks to Yu Il-shin, the B-class zombie, Hades, evolved to S-class. Now it became clear why Guomengji was acting strangely. The old man, delighted, said that he had never seen anything like it and would not miss such an opportunity. He asked for just nothing, 3 sons, since Yu Il-shin's blood was too valuable. The hero, indignant, realized that they wanted to use him as a breeding stallion, and mentally dismissed the idea of becoming a grandson-in-law. Go Saduk handed over an envelope containing a check for 1,000,000,001, promising that the money would be his if he agreed. The director, seeing the amount, was amazed, noting that for that kind of money one could agree, even though it looked like selling one's body. Yu Il-shin, despite the temptation, with 1,000,000,000 you can forget about deadlines, could not come to terms with the appearance of a girl who looked as if she had died 4 times and was ready to drag him to the grave. He firmly stated that he was disappointed with the attempt to buy love with money and would not go for such a marriage. Turning around, the hero decided to leave, but he was stopped by a girl who introduced herself as Go Myungwi. She is a half-breed with witch and human blood, 20 years old, with transcendental potential. Her enchanting gaze could seduce anyone. The director shouted at Yu Il-shin not to look into her eyes, but they had already lit up with bright colors, activating the skill. Go Myungwi asked what he saw in her eyes, and the hero, honestly answering that they were beautiful, still refused to be hers. The director shouted at her and forbade her to use the dirty trick, claiming that it was not love. Go Saduk cut him off, threatening that he would not leave him alone if he touched his granddaughter. Choi Kang-san, indignant, declared that everyone had gone crazy. The bewitching gaze deprives one of reason. But Yu Il-shin, having resisted the charm, repeated his refusal, emphasizing that Go Myungwi was not his type. Leaving the room, he turned around, asking if she really considered him a thing, and slamming the door, left. The bewitching gaze didn't work, and the hero was surprised by his own tenacity. In the corridor, he thought, 1,000,000,001 is a pity, but better than climbing into a coffin after this girl. While he was thinking about her witch origins and her mother, he didn't notice purple magic appearing from behind. Hands reached out from the portal, pulling him inside. Meanwhile, Go Myungwi, sitting in the car with her grandfather, looked like an ordinary girl. Go Saduk asked her how she liked the husband candidate, and she replied that she was delighted. He asked why she showed up with such terrible makeup. Go Myungwi explained that she doesn't want a husband who marries only for looks. Go Saduk agreed, noting that no one expected the enchanting gaze to fail. That's why she wants to get Yu Il-shin even more. Only an S-class hunter could resist. The old man assured that the boy was already in his hands. Go Myungwi, in disbelief, asked what he had done, but Go Saduk only laughed. Yu Il-shin looked around and realized that he was in Go Saduk's dimension. Around him circled the zombie warriors from the necromancer's collection, drooling and wondering whether to disobey the order and eat him. The hero, surprised by their intentions, found it funny. Who dared to sharpen their teeth at him? Activating Il-ho's steel body, he began to grow in size and declared that these guys were nothing to him. Sarcastically offering them 1,000,000,000 for the conversation, he reminded them that he was now a low-ranking god and asked if they understood that. Yu Il-shin, mocking the zombie warriors, stated that no matter how huge they seemed, they were just flesh, and even if they attacked at once, he would fight back. He compared them to a legion of ants, against which they would be nothing, and activated the god's condemning middle finger, setting everyone on fire. The Yaksha warriors, who had never known defeat, were shocked to see such a skill for the first time. They, defeated by one creature, wondered if it was a god before them. The protagonist looked around, looking for the leader, confident that it was a woman. Using the blind eye of God, he analyzed two generals. One was a follower of the hard beast. The other is the knight of vivid fantasies. Yu Ilshin was surprised to realize that they were followers of the evil gods, which explained Go Saduk's strength. But his gaze caught on the irises of one of the general's eyes, which resembled Go Myungwi's eyes. The hero was attacked by a general who was incredibly powerful, and Yu Ilshin used God's crushing index finger. The girl general, noticing the iris, was surprised that he did not succumb to her enchanting gaze. She suspected that in front of her was the young god from the rumors, who possessed enormous power. Deciding to check, she came closer, but, to the hero's surprise, instead of attacking, she knelt down, begging him to have mercy on them. Yu Ilshin, stunned, did not expect that the Yakshi were capable of telepathic communication. By activating the blind voice of God, he received a brief history of the general. Her name was Lilith, and she was the daughter and follower of Night of Bright Fantasies, a majestic goddess who lost to the god of destruction. The goddess, having fled, lost her strength, and to restore it, she needed the souls of strong S-class warriors. Lilith, descending to earth with a bewitching gaze, easily seduced men but met Go Saduk, who resisted her charms. Having fallen in love, she married him and gave birth to a child. However, the abyssal dragon, a servant of the god of destruction, found and mortally wounded her. Go Saduk, in desperation, offered a contract, her soul for the fulfillment of a wish. Lilith refused to be resurrected, and he made her a yaksha to stay with her forever. Yu Ilshin realized that Lilith was Go Myungwi's grandmother, and her deal with the soul was an ancient truth. Generous Abundance, shedding tears, begged the hero to have mercy on her, but he was against it because she was trying to devour him. However, Generous Abundance, in confusion, noted that the idea was not bad. Lilith was an S-class with transcendental potential, and if she became his follower, it would be beneficial. Yu Ilshin, after thinking it over, decided that another S-class follower wouldn't hurt, and if the set included Go Saduk and possibly Go Myungwi, then it would be 3 for the price of 1. 1,000 blades. Cutting through space itself praised him for his prudence, comparing him to himself, and Generous Abundance thanked him for his mercy, reminding him that the hero needed to become stronger before the arrival of the god of destruction, whom he already hated. Yu Ilshin activated the title of Good God, and a halo appeared above his head. He chuckled and called the attribute scary, but overall not bad. After using the ringless healing finger of God on Lilith's forehead, he had a premonition of something good. But suddenly the girl began to cry, and the Yaksha warriors around her began to melt. The hero, in a panic, did not understand why the healing skill of the good god caused such an effect. The notice explained that the Yaksha warriors were being purified, and that replacing evil with good was a painful process. Lilith, realizing that Yu Ilshin was a young god, realized her mistake, feeling as if she was being reborn by his grace. The Yaksha warriors were reborn as angel warriors, but the hero was surprised at how much smaller they were. At that moment, a creature appeared who was looking for Lilith. It, calling her a vile traitor, rejoiced at her return.